I don't know his name. I don't know his age. I don't know where he lives, and I certainly don't know how to find him. All that I know is that he's dangerous, and he's on the move. I'm a government employee. I work in a research lab that develops experimental weaponry, primarily of the biological variety. I don't want to say much more than that, as this is already at massive risk of exposing my identity, but I will say that I'm not exactly an intern. I've seen things. I've studied things. I've created things. I created him. Or better put, I recreated him. Confused? I don't blame you. If you're reading this, then you're well aware of the concepts of legends and mythology. Things that feed on our collective imaginations to grow more powerful. That live on our tongues as we utter their names and speak their stories. Growing and evolving until they become a force of their own. Unstoppable. Unforgettable. The man with the red notepad is one of them. I'm not positive, but I think his legend began in an email chain from the late 90s. You know the type. Forward this to 20 people in the next hour, or some asshole is going to hack you to pieces with an axe. Except his went a little differently. In his, he would find his victims and draw them. Sometimes he would draw them drowning to death. Other times he would draw them wasting away in a hospital bed. And other times he would draw them being cut open and pulled apart. It was a coin toss what version of the internet myth you'd encounter. But all of them had one thing in common. He would draw you, and you would die. The thing about the man, though, was that his sketches were thorough. It wasn't enough to simply make a stick figure labeled Sally and have that stick figure being impaled by a flagpole. No. In his sketches, Sally was a detailed work of art, with immaculate shading and perfect lines. There were exceptions to the rule, of course. Wrinkles, makeup, long hair, short hair. Things that would naturally change over the course of a lifetime. These never needed to be exact. As long as the core of the individual was on display, his nightmare worked its magic. As such, his sketches would take hours. Sometimes they would take days. It was only after he was finished his sketches and signed them with his messy initials that the death sentence would trigger. When I received the assignment, I laughed. Give life to a legend, I remember saying to my boss. You know April Fool's was 6 months ago, right? She wasn't laughing, though. I remember the way she took a deep breath, straightened her blouse, and sat down in the chair across from me. I remember the steeple of her fingers, the nervous twitch at the corner of her mouth, and the smell of cheap coffee gently steaming on the table between us. Fear, she said carefully, is a weapon more powerful than bullets and bombs. We need that right now. That was 6 years ago. I've grown since then, mentally and physically. So has the man. He started life in a test tube, shapeless and helpless. Before long, though, he was walking, talking, and after not much longer than that, he was killing. At first, it was prisoners. People we'd pulled from black sites. We'd sit both of them in a lab we called the Red Room. The prisoner chained, and the man behind a plexiglass divider. He'd draw them, and they would die. Sometimes they'd catch fire. Other times, they'd break out in hives, scratch their own skin bloody, and flay themselves alive. Always, though, they would die. Needless to say, we didn't permit him his notepad when the experiments weren't running. In the time between, he'd sit alone in his small cell, hunched over in the corner with his head down. I suppose I couldn't blame him. With only a thin mattress, a bowl to shit and piss in, and 2 meals a day, there wasn't much else for him to do. We kept 2 cameras pointed at him, at the front of the room just in case, monitoring the man at all times. We even made sure to cycle the guards. on the off chance he managed to coax one of them into becoming sympathetic. Hell, thanks to some clever genetic work on the part of my science team, he rarely even needed showers, so he was virtually always under lock and key. We took steps, is what I'm saying. We covered our bases. Despite it all, though, he escaped. I got the call last week, and my boss broke the news. At first, I called bullshit. It wasn't possible. Nobody escaped the facility. Hell, I remember the day it had first opened, when I was still a young man with stars and stripes in my eyes, and fantasies of helping my country defeat the bad guys. I remember the contractor who'd overseen the construction, a round and hairy man with breath like garlic sausage, and the fingers to match. He'd called the facility state-of-the-art, proudly boasting that Sherlock fucking Holmes couldn't break out of here. And yet, the man was gone. Not only was he gone, but he had left a bloodbath in his wake. All in all, there were over 10 security personnel dead. One of the guards was found outside the man's cell, her skull cracked open and brain matter gently oozing from the fracture. Another was found in the camera control room, a bottle of Drano at his side and vomit covering his chest. Another was a personal friend of mine, and head of the overnight guard detail. And he was found draped over the woman who ran the front desk, a bullet in both of their brains. It was horrifying and mystifying all at once. How could this have happened? The man's cell was entirely enclosed and didn't allow him to see any of our personnel. The most it had was a tiny slot on the bottom that we passed food through, and he passed his shit and piss through. Each week when we'd retrieve him for our experiments, we'd even dispatch personnel to scrub the room and ensure he wasn't drawing on any of the surfaces. Of course, we tried consulting the camera footage, but the camera had been disabled during his escape. There was nothing. He was just gone. A few hours after the escape, I got a call from the IT department. They'd been going back through some old footage of the man, trying to determine if there was some hint of what was to come. Something that might indicate exactly what had happened. They showed me footage of the man in his cell, and it looked like the same routine I'd seen 1,000 times before. He sat in the far corner with his head down, silently waiting for his next meal or bowel movement. There was the sound of a latch opening, followed by a woman's voice calling the man to supper, and then a covered plate of food slid across the floor. The man shifted, getting up to retrieve the plate, and when he did, I saw it. A tapestry of red was written upon his flesh, detailed and intricate, markings covering his stomach that looked to have been carved by the edge of a fingernail. He quickly readjusted his shirt, taking care to tuck it back into his waistband. My jaw dropped in stunned silence. "Can you play back the footage with his shirt up?" I said quietly. "But take a still capture and zoom in." The IT technician nodded and did so. That's when it all came together. The markings in the man's flesh were his escape plan, his sketches. Each one an immaculate carving of the facility's guards. Each one a piece of the puzzle. One showed a guard unlocking the man's cell, then caving in her own skull with the heavy steel door. Another had a guard disabling the cameras and then swallowing drain cleaner. The last sketch was of the man I knew, the head of the nighttime guard detail. It pictured him shooting and killing 7 other security personnel, and then turning his sidearm on himself. There was also another sketch. I recognized that face well, and my heart sank momentarily before realizing the subject of the sketch was still alive. She was a secretary in our archives, a young woman who had tragically lost her arm in a traffic collision 2 months ago. She hadn't been back to work yet, but it pictured her burning down the archives and all the local research we had of the man, before walking into the flames herself. In the man's flesh, though, she still had 2 arms. My mind turned, and I realized how the man had pulled it all off. It was in the time between experiments. It was during the walks we'd take to the Red Room. While he made his way along the corridors and chains, he'd catalog the faces, features. He'd store them away in his memory, taking care to notice the small details of their schedules. He'd grown up here, after all. Spent years in the facility. He had plenty of time to grow familiar. At first, my boss refused to believe it. She argued that he never indicated any such capability in the email chains we'd pulled his legend from. That he'd always needed his red notepad. And once he had it, he needed his subjects present to sketch them. It was, of course, our mistake to forget that legends evolve. Now, that mistake has cost people their lives. I see it in the news reports. They're easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for. But I know that the man is on the move. And he's killing again. The facility and the government refuse to comment on it. They refuse to come clean about the things we're doing, and the danger the public is in. My boss died 2 days ago. A day before that, a member of my research team passed away. The day before that, 2 other members died. I'd probably be dead myself if I hadn't seen the writing on the wall and taken one of my own fingers off. So now I'm taking matters into my own hands. I'm raising the alarm to you, the public. The man with the red notepad is out there. He may be sketching you. You might not even see him doing it. Maybe he'll just say hello to you in passing. Maybe he'll just take a memory. But if you do catch somebody looking at you a little too carefully, or glancing your way before putting pen to paper, then it's time to run. It's time to run and maybe leave a finger behind, for good measure. I don't like him, Liam says, staring a hole into the ground. Mr. Gallows hurt my sister, and he tried to hurt me too. The kid's young. Younger than most subjects I've dealt with. He's witnessed an event. And not just any event. A serious one. It's something that could have massive implications. My bosses are calling it a situation. And they're telling me I need to get his story. And I need to get it quickly. Because people's lives are on the line. I'm an interviewer for an organization known as the Facility. I specialize in working with juveniles who have crossed paths with the supernatural. Liam Hainsworth is one such kid. He's just shy of 12 years old, but he looks worn down. His eyes are framed with heavy bags, and his skin is tight to his cheekbones. He's also missing at least 3 of his teeth. How did he hurt your sister? I ask. The room we're in is brightly lit, with cartoon animals nailed to the walls and faded imprints of Looney Tunes on the carpet. It's designed to calm kids down. He pulled out her teeth. I write down his words on my clipboard. As I do, I record details about Liam, his expression, his tone of voice. It's all important in some way or another. All of it swims together to build a picture of whether what he's saying is true or false. Sometimes it's both, and the minutia helps determine where reality ends and the lies begin. Why did he do it? I ask. Liam shrugs, rubbing his arm. It's an expression of discomfort, of nervousness. He's not sure he should be talking so much. He's not sure it's safe to say, "You want to know why he pulled out her teeth?" That's right. I already know Liam's sister is dead. She's been dead for several months. So it seems strange that he would fixate on the monster pulling out her teeth, as opposed to the murder. Do you know why? He shakes his head. There's something there, though. In his eyes. There's something that says he isn't telling me the full story. So I press him. Does he ever talk to you, Liam? This Mr. Gallows? He nods. He still won't look at me, but that's okay. Kids are nervous at the best of times. After what he's been through, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't look another person in the eye for years. What does he say when he speaks to you? Liam opens his mouth. His lips are pale and they tremble. He tells me I can't talk about him. It's okay, I say. I'm one of the good guys. I pull out my badge, with the howling wolf inlaid in gold, and I show it to him. See? I'm like a police officer. Except for kids dealing with scary things. I can make stuff like that go away. It's a line I've used 100 times before. I'm not sure it's ever worked. I'm not a kid, Liam says, folding his arms. I'm almost 12. And I don't think anybody can make him go away. Liam's smart for his age. Top of his class. According to my preliminary research and the discussion I had with his father, he's never felt at home around other children. They bore him, his father said. What if I can make Mr. Gallows go away, though? I lean back in my chair, and its legs creak under my weight. Don't you think that's worth a shot? There's a moment of silence between us, and I let it stretch into eons. Time works differently for kids. It feels longer, more tiresome. Soon enough, it stretches on long enough that it wears on Liam, too. I guess so, he says at length. Good, I reply, swallowing my smile of satisfaction. I'm here to help, remember. It's my job. He chews his lip for a second, and behind his mop of black hair, I catch sight of him glancing at me. Okay, he says. I just want him to leave me alone. Me too. I run my pencil down the sheet on my clipboard, pausing under the heading that reads Origin Apparatus. When did all of this begin? A year ago. Pretty much. I was 10 and a half. That's a long time for a young man. How often does he visit? Lots. Almost every night. Almost. I make specific note of that term. It's a throwaway line, but one potentially valuable. The first time he visited you, what happened? I was sleeping, Liam says. His hands are tugging at the strings of his hoodie, and he's staring at a smiling ostrich on the wall. It was winter. I remember feeling really cold. I had all my blankets on, but I was still shivering. I got up to turn on the heat, and I noticed my window was open. I nod along with his words, my pencil scribbling across the form. The cold could have been a ghost or a spirit, but the open window is the more likely culprit. I try not to cast judgment quite yet. After all, my bosses seem to think that this kid is the genuine article, and his mutilated mother does a good job supporting that. Still, I didn't get this far by cutting corners. Did you leave it open when you went to bed? I ask. I don't think so. I make a note on my clipboard. Please, continue. I walk over to close it, Liam says, and his voice starts to stutter and die. Then I see something on the other side. Somebody's out there watching me. Far away by the fence. Is your bedroom on ground level? The house is just one floor, he explains. My bedroom faces the backyard, and I see a man out there just past the garden. He's waving at me. Waving at you? Yeah, just like this. Liam raises his hand and slowly moves it side to side. His expression is deadpan, and his lips are twitching. It makes me uncomfortable, so I go lock the window. And then the man shuffles forward a bit. I realize there's something weird about him. It's dark, so it's hard to see, but it looks like he's hunched over on all fours. Like a dog? Yeah. As he shuffles forward, he calls out to me. He tells me to wait. Don't close the window, he says. I have something for you. Then, I want something for me. Something moves across Liam's face. Disgust, maybe? Self-loathing? It's quick, whatever it is. I listen to him. Liam continues. I don't know why. I think it's because I realize he isn't human. Or maybe I'm in shock. All I know is closing the window feels pointless now. It feels like it's more likely to piss the thing off and make it want to come in even more. I listen to Liam's words intently. His story is compelling enough, but his vocabulary is more impressive by far. It's no wonder the kid skipped a grade. Understandable, I tell him. What happens next? Liam squirms in his seat. As he gets closer to the window, he reaches out a long, skeletal hand. There's blood on his bony fingers, and now that he's only a few feet away, I notice he's wearing this burlap sack over his head, with a little hole cut out for his mouth. Except his mouth doesn't have any teeth. He tells me he's hungry. He says he really needs something to eat. I'm scared. I've never seen anything like this before, and I don't know what to do, so I tell him I need to ask my mom. I tell him we have some leftover turkey in the fridge, and I'll be right back. Liam pauses, and it's like the world is falling around him. His eyes are bloodshot, and I wonder when he last blinked. The man grabs me by my arm, and it hurts. He tells me my mom doesn't need to know. He says he came to my window for a reason. He pulls me closer, and his grip really hurts, and when he whispers in my ear, it aches. It feels like he's cutting the inside of me. He says I'm special. My eyes glance up to the camera in the corner of the room, and I raise an eyebrow. I know my supervisors are watching. Special, I repeat. Why? Liam shakes his head. He's back to tugging at the strings of his hoodie. I don't know. He asks me again if he can come in, and I tell him I have to ask my mom. But at this point, I'm not planning to ask her anything. I'm just going to tell her there's a psycho out there, and we need to tell Dad and the police and wake the neighborhood up. He tells me if I don't invite him inside, though, he's going to add my blood to his hands. Then he runs a finger across my cheek, and it's cold, searing cold. He asks me if he can come inside again. He says he's hungry. He just wants to bite to eat, and then he'll leave. Promise, he says. Liam takes a shuddering breath. His eyes are closed. The smiling animals aren't working anymore, if they ever did. He's alone with his thoughts now. They're tearing at him, picking away at his mental state, and in his expression I see the grimaces of grief and regret. You aren't to blame for this, I remind him. What happened was going to happen whether you were there or not. When he opens his eyes, they're soaked with tears. No, it wasn't, he snaps. It happened because I let him in. It happened because I told him he could get something to eat. I open my mouth and realize there's nothing to say. There are no words that will take away this boy's pain. So instead, I look back to my clipboard. I busy myself writing down the details of the man's request and the boy's reaction. When I'm finished, I have to ask him to continue. I hate myself for it. I always do. He does. I tell him he can come inside, but he needs to be quick. I tell him not to steal anything either. He shakes his head. There's doubt in his eyes, disbelief. I thought he was telling the truth. I didn't think... His words are lost in sobs. I thought he would leave. It's fine, I say in a soothing voice. I reach out a hand to touch his knee to comfort him, but he winces, so I pull my hand back. You're safe now. She's not, he says. She's not, and she'll never be safe again. I take a breath. It's hard, these interviews. They always are. Children are supposed to be the pieces of the world that are pure and untouched by the horror that humanity perpetuates. They're meant to be idyllic, fantastical. Too often, they're not. I'm sorry to interrupt, I say. Go on. Liam's sobs taper off into a frown, and then a snarl. Rage replaces despair. That's when he told me his name. Mr. Gallows. He tipped his top hat to me and said, "Nice to meet you." And then he crawled up through the window. Liam reaches up a hand, wiping away the evidence of tears. He was gross looking. His bones were snapping and twisting as he hunched over, lurching through the opening. The window's not that big. Maybe large enough for me to fit through, or another 12-year-old, but not a full-grown man. And Mr. Gallows was much bigger than anybody I'd ever seen. Mr. Gallows, I mutter, staring at the name on the sheet. It's not an entity I'm familiar with. My preliminary research didn't come up with any leads either. Whoever this legend was in life, he certainly didn't make much of a name for himself. Once more, I raise an eyebrow to the cameras, and my supervisor's watching from the other room. I wonder why this event is so important to them. How tall was he? I ask. Tall enough that even on all fours his back scraped along the ceiling. He had to crane down his neck to look at me. I could just barely see his eyes through the burlap sack he wore over his face. He asked me to show him to the kitchen, so I did. I walked him to the fridge and opened it, and when the light came on, I saw Mr. Gallows was wearing this old raggedy suit. Looked like someone from the 1800s, covered in dust and moth holes. My hands shook as I pulled out the leftover turkey, but Mr. Gallows didn't notice. He was too busy humming. It sounded like an old song, a really old one, but I don't remember the tune. Liam pauses before adding, "I'm sorry." "That's fine," I say, jotting it down on the clipboard. These are interesting details. The intense cold, antique apparel, and out-of-date song certainly led me to believe we were dealing with a ghost. Was the food to his liking? Liam shrugs. He looks uncomfortable again. He's shaking, shivering. There's something about him that's different. Like he's having some sort of reaction. "Are you feeling all right?" I ask. He nods furiously. "Yes, I feel fine. I give him the plate of turkey, and the man asks how he's supposed to eat it. I tell him, I don't know, can you just swallow it? And he snarls, clacking over the kitchen tile and putting his face right next to mine. He tells me there's more room for blood on his fingers, lots more. I'm whimpering. I tell him I don't know what he wants. He tells me that he wants some teeth so he can eat. He opens his mouth and shows me his empty gum, swishing his tongue around some. Then he reaches up a hand and forces my mouth open. "You've got a nice set," he says. I'm starting to panic. My legs feel wobbly, my head is spinning, and I think maybe if I can change the subject, I can bide my time long enough for my mom to wake up and she'll see what's going on or call the cops or dad. I don't want to scream, though, or be too obvious, because I think this guy, this creature, doesn't have any qualms about murder. So I keep my mouth shut, mostly. I stick to safe topics. Like what? I ask. Like what he had for me? Yes. I have something for you. Then I want something for me. They were among the first words Mr. Gallows spoke to the boy. A bargain. One innocent enough. Of course, to entities like Gallows, such deals are usually deceptions, or a means to an end. They allow the creature to broker for horrors too terrible to put into words. What did he have for you, Liam? Tears slip down the boy's gaunt face. He raises a sweater sleeve, wiping them away before sniffling. He had a message. Liam's nose is running, and he looks sickly. Unwell. He said it was from somebody he never wanted to meet. How curious. What was the message? Just some words? Liam's eyes stare at the floor, and he crumples into a ball of hoodie and jeans. He wipes his runny nose on his knees and makes himself small. I didn't understand them. Some words. I let that roll around in my head for a while. It doesn't mean much now. But when you've been doing this job for as many years as I have, you learn pretty quickly that strange words aren't meant to be dismissed. Words have power. Were they in another language? I ask. Or were they too quiet to be properly heard? A different language, Liam says. He's squirming like crazy now. I've scarcely seen a kid look so uncomfortable in my entire career. Maybe Latin? He shakes his head. I only know French. That's alright. What happens after he says those words? Mr. Gallows gets angry. He tells me now that I've gotten what I'm owed, he wants what he's owed. I gave something to you, he says. And now I want something for me. I ask what he wants, but I already know. He opens his toothless mouth, pointing at his gums with a long, skeletal finger. I'll take some of these, I think. He laughs a bit and tips his top hat again, adding, please and thank you. He crawls up in front of me and pushes me against the wall. Open up, he says. I try to keep my mouth closed, but I can't. He's too strong, and he forces it open. Then he reaches in and... Liam gets quiet. His mouth hangs open, and he reaches a hand up, feeling where 3 of his front teeth should be. He pulled them out. You just wanted 3 of your teeth? I ask. Moments pass, and Liam's face looks tortured. His mouth is being pulled in every direction, oscillating between frowns and grimaces, and his eyes are blinking erratically. I nearly call a break in the interview, but he starts talking before I get the words out. He reaches back inside my mouth to pull out more, but the kitchen door opens. It's my little sister, Lacey. She's bleary-eyed and yawning, and then her eyes adjust and she realizes what she's looking at. She realizes the nightmare she just walked in on. Liam swallows. She screams for Mom. In the blink of an eye, Mr. Gallows stampedes across the kitchen and wraps a hand around her mouth. Shh, little girl, he says, using his other long arm to pet her hair. Then he puts his face close to hers and he opens his mouth again, showing those toothless gums. He whispers for her to be quiet. He says as long as she doesn't scream again, he won't kill her. My pencil flies across the clipboard. This is likely the defining moment of the event. The moment that Mr. Gallows murders Liam's sister. I keep my ears open and brace for the worst. He moves his hand from her mouth. Liam continues. Lacey's silent, so am I. Part of me is hoping that Mom heard Lacey scream, but another part of me knows better. I think Lacey does too. Even if Dad were home, I doubted it would make a difference. Mr. Gallows was too big. We needed a SWAT team. I offer a consoling smile. It's likely that a SWAT team would have been equally ineffective. You did what you could, Liam, with what you had. You didn't want anybody to get hurt, and that's very brave. He looks down. His expression is despondent, but he doesn't wait for me to prompt him. He keeps talking like I never said a thing. Mr. Gallows opens Lacey's mouth. He He slips a finger inside and feels her teeth. He's looking at her through that burlap sack and he's mumbling to himself, but I can't make out what he's saying. Eventually he turns to me and asks, "These are new, aren't they?" I know he's talking about her teeth. She's a year younger than me, but she's gotten most of her adult teeth by now. He taps on them, and it makes a clicking sound, bone on bone. And then he pulls away. He looks back and says, "These will do." And then Liam goes quiet. His body quakes. His eyes bulge. It's like he's trying to contain something. Whether it's furious rage or tumultuous despair, whatever it is, it's desperate to get out. He doesn't want it to. Mom appears in the doorway wearing her nightgown. All the color's gone from her face. She's looking at me with my mouth full of blood and 3 missing teeth to the monster standing over Lacey. She snaps, snatches a knife from the kitchen counter and runs at Mr. Gallows. I chew on my pencil eraser. It's a foolish gesture, but one I can understand. As a new parent myself, there's very little I wouldn't do to protect my baby. "Your mother attacked Mr. Gallows?" Liam nods. It takes him a while to get the words out, like he's trying to do it without letting something else slip. I feel for him. It's difficult for children to keep their emotions in check, particularly when recounting traumatic events. She runs at him and starts slashing and hacking at him, screaming at him to let Lacey go or she'll call the police, or the church, or the FBI. Mr. Gallows grabs her by her hair, smashes her head down on the floor, hits linoleum with a thud, and then she gets really still. I remember thinking she was dead. But then he picks her up again and smashes her down a second time. And I hear something crack. Blood starts pooling on the floor. Her leg is twitching. Liam takes a shuddering breath. I want to reach out and give him a hug, but he's already responded adversely to being consoled. Instead, I pay him a look of understanding. Talking about these things is probably tearing him apart inside. His mother survived, of course, but she was irreparably damaged. Mr. Gallows turns to Lacey. She's crying and shrieking, and he puts his hand into her mouth and she starts gagging. He starts pulling out her teeth, jamming them into his gums one by one, humming as he goes. Liam leans forward and retches, vomits on the floor. Yellow-brown bile splatters my shoes. I shoot up out of my chair, indicating to the cameras that we need a cleanup crew in here, and that the interview is on hold. Liam hurls again, and more throw-up spews from his mouth. I crouch next to him, placing a hand on his back. It's okay. You're safe. I say the words, but I don't know what they're supposed to do. How do you make a kid feel better after witnessing his mom's skull split open on the kitchen floor? How does anything make that go away? I whisper affirmations into his ear for what feels like hours, but must have only been minutes. It's not your fault, I say. You're a good person. A knock on the door interrupts me. I rise, unsure why anybody would be knocking. All employees with access should already have a keycard granting them entry. "Hello?" I call out. "Cleanup crew." A muffled voice calls back through the thick steel. "Can you let us in?" I frown, looking from Liam to the door. I move toward the video communicator on the wall, activating it and seeing 2 janitorial staff on the other side. One of them holds up a mop in exasperation, while the other flashes her ID. "Our keycard isn't working," she says. "Can you open it on your end?" Something about the situation unnerves me, but I shake it off. We're in a secured government compound. Facility agents are swarming the premises. We're as safe as can be. So I disengage the manual lock. The door won't budge. I try again, repeating the process, making sure I did it correctly. Still nothing. I press the communicator. Sorry, I say. It looks like this room's malfunctioning. Can we get a tech team down here to look at it? I can't open it manually. They grumble and turn away, leaving their mop and bucket behind them. I look back to Liam. The smell of fresh vomit is still thick in the air, but my focus is singular, on him and him alone. He said Mr. Gallows had visited him almost every night for the past year. That had only been the first day. Liam? I say in a small voice. He's sitting in the chair, head in his hands, weeping with bits of puke still dripping from his chin. I take a step forward. If Mr. Gallows gave you his message and then got his teeth, why did he keep coming back? Liam looks up. His eyes are murky, clouded. He wanted to say sorry. He lifts a sleeve to his mouth, wiping some of the bile from his face. He kept apologizing. I'm so sorry, kid, he'd say. I didn't know. Sorry for what? I ask. Killing your sister? A howl envelops the room, and Liam breaks into quaking sobs. The lights in the room flicker. There's a clatter to the right of me, and I look down and see toy building blocks shifting across the floor. On the wall, the cartoon animals aren't smiling anymore. They're slowly melting away. Liam's face is ugly now, and he's crying as hard as I've ever seen. He didn't know who I was, he chokes out. He thought I was just another kid. My heart races as steam hisses from Liam's eyes, and I realize the tears are evaporating even as they form, dying in the smoldering blaze of his pupils. A wind picks up in the room and it tugs at my shirt, whipping about in a gale that tears the posters from the walls and casts the toys into a tornado of color. Hands behind me, I stumble backwards and try the door again. It won't budge. I'm trapped. My eyes drift up to the camera on the ceiling, but the red recording light is off. I'm alone. It's just me now. I take a breath, inhaling the fumes of vomit and sulfur, and I wonder if death is going to be half as bad as all these monsters make it seem. Who are you? I ask, and I'm unable to keep the terror from my voice. Are you Mr. Gallows? Perhaps the kid is possessed. I've seen it before. No, Liam whimpers. I'm a bad person, though. I'm an awful person. Why did Mr. Gallows... I'm almost shouting now as the tempest rocks the entire room. Why did he feel the need to keep apologizing? Learning blocks and toy trucks ricochet off the wall, narrowly missing my face. He was scared, Liam bawls. He was scared I would hurt him if he didn't. Why? I scream. The gale stops. The toys fall with a clatter, and the animals on the wall aren't melting anymore. They're beaming with the same fake smiles they've always had. My breath heaves in my chest. My legs quiver. But I'm alive. I'm okay. Liam sits quietly in his plastic chair. He's staring at Bugs Bunny on the carpet. His small hands are clenched into fists, and whatever fire once burned in his eyes is now extinguished. He's just a boy again. The broken, trembling boy I promised I would save. I'm no longer sure I can. Liam? I say, taking a nervous step forward. Is it okay if we talk? He doesn't say anything, but he nods. Why was Mr. Gallows afraid of you? I do my best to maintain a calm tone, but my voice is all over the place. I can barely keep myself from stuttering. Did it have something to do with what just happened? Silence. He's whimpering again, and his hands are tugging at the strings of his hoodie like his life depends on it. Tears litter the carpet around him. I'm sorry, he says. I didn't mean to. It's okay, I say, moving closer to him. My legs feel like jello, and my mind still untangling itself from what I just witnessed. I can tell you're a good person, Liam. Liam turns to me, and there's fear in his features. He closes his eyes, clenches them shut, and he winces in pain. It's hard, he says. It gets harder every day. I take a few more steps forward, and I'm back in my chair. I sit down in it, brushing frizzled hair from my face and taking a deep breath. My eyes snap back up to the camera. It's recording again, and I know they're watching. I wonder if they witnessed the scene that just unfolded. They probably already knew, I decide. They were expecting it. Liam, I say in a careful tone, why was Mr. Gallows afraid of you? His blue eyes appear, one blink at a time. He looks small in his chair, and when he speaks, his words are faint. I barely hear them. He's afraid I'm here to kill him. A smile plays at the corner of his lips, and he grips his face with both hands. Agony fills his eyes, and his next words leave a mark that no response can fill. They crash around me like a carpet bomb. I'm afraid I'm here to kill all of us. Once more, my eyes dart up to the camera. Is this what my supervisors were after? Is this the real event? Am I the one experiencing it? What makes you say that? I say, and my words are clipped, breathless. Fear has wormed its way into me. I'm one of them, Liam says, clutching a fistful of hair. His eyes pulse with blood, and he groans. He told me so. His voice strains against something. It's jagged. Sharp. He told me I was one of them. I was born to cast the earth into flame and ash. Who? Them, he says, raising his eyes to my own. The gods beyond the veil. He's different now. He's not the boy I knew. And I'm not even sure he's human. There's a darkness to him. A suffocating, mighty abyss that's pulling at me, begging me to join it. The Eldritch, he says, and his eyes are crackling again with dancing flames. I want to run. I want to get out of here, but I know better. The only way out is through. Your sister, I say in an uneven voice. Police had found Lacey Hainsworth in 6 pieces. Her arm on one side of the house, her leg on the other. The home was a bloodbath. Liam's mother had witnessed all of it from her wheelchair, and the scene had driven her mad. A monster, she had repeated. A monster killed my baby. Did Mr. Gallows kill her? I whisper. Liam's eyes flare. You tell me, he says. Agony replaces everything I've ever known. I feel my arm lurch to the side and something invisible is pulling at it, heaving while some other force holds me in place. I shriek for help. I scream at Liam to stop. I do everything I can to move and run, but I'm stuck in place. There's a horrible sound of tearing flesh, and my world goes black. I come to a second later, and blood is pouring from a hole in my torso where my arm used to be. The door crashes open, and 6 people in robes rush in, casting warding charms and backing Liam into a corner. Someone jabs a needle in me, and another starts wrapping me in gauze. Somebody shouts, "Keep him back! He's in critical condition!" A blinding flash fills the room, and then the world fades away. Darkness envelops my thoughts, my memories, my mind. There's nothing to see or hear or think about anymore. It's just the void. Unending. Ceaseless. I call out, but I have no voice. I'm drifting. Senseless through infinity. It is wonderful. It is terrifying. I open my eyes to the bright lights of the medical bay. I'm in a hospital bed. My body is covered in bandages, and there are doctors and people in suits discussing something near me. They don't seem to realize I'm awake. I try to open my mouth to speak, but it's too hard, so I just listen. He's the one, then? The conclusion? Seems like it. Didn't expect him to go nuclear back there, though. Talk about teenage angst. A laugh. A woman. No kidding. Honestly, it's a wonder this guy survived. Word is he was right beside the kid when it went down. Looking at him, I'm not surprised. Another voice. Male. I've never seen so much necrosis. You remember Jacob, the dickhead from Public Affairs? Oh yeah, don't get me started on Jacob. Well, he was by earlier giving us all the rundown. If anybody asks, the damage was caused by a gas leak, that's all. But he let slip a few extra details. Oh, spill the beans. There's a clattering sound. Steel on steel. Surgical instruments being sifted through. I'm still too weak to speak. Too weak to move. Apparently they sent in warlocks to deal with the kid. All the men ended up as piles of salt. Now the compound's just a few bricks and a cloud of asbestos. A woman snorts, then laughs. What were they expecting? As if warding charms could hold off an eldritch god. Technically, he's not a god, only a harbinger. A different man. His voice is casual. Teasing. I strain my eyes and see the blurry outline of a black suit. The gods come later, Cheryl. More laughter. It's a damn shame. I read our patient's file here, and if you can believe it, this was the one who sorted out the boundless whispers. Smart one. Great with kids, too. Not smart enough. The first man again. A doctor, maybe. Just like I've always said. Most people at Compound 7 are inept. That's not fair, Dave. The woman tuts. They had some duds over there, same as we do here. They were doing important work, though. Pass me the scalpel, will you? Of course. Thanks. Steel cuts into my flesh. It hurts, but I can't move. I can't speak. I'm too weak, too absent. I should let the two of you get back to it, then. The man in the suit. Don't sweat it, Ryan. We're nearly done here anyway. The steel digs deeper. A piece of me comes free. Anyway, I'm not surprised Compound 7 fucked everything up all over again. With the conclusion's power, we had a real shot at ending this invasion before it started, didn't we, Ryan? We really shouldn't be talking about this in the open, Dave. I shouldn't have mentioned it. My brain feels mushy now. Slow. More pieces of me are sliced free. I hear the wet slap of my flesh dropping into a metal pan. This is hardly in the open, Ryan. We're well enough alone. Now the kid is, too. He's lost in the wind, apparently. Jesus, he's awake! There's hurried movement around me. I see the blur of a face, the white of a surgical gown. Figures swim in front of me. Two of them, a woman and a man. Doctors, surgeons. They're saying things. They're telling me I've had a bad accident and I've suffered terrible wounds. They're telling me they're going to give me more morphine so I can get some sleep. I try to tell them no. I try to tell them I want to know what's going on. My world goes dark. The next time I wake up, I'm alone. The hospital room is empty, save for a desk in the far corner and the buzzing fluorescent light above. I feel stronger now, more conscious. I sit up with some struggle and my body feels different. Alien. It's as though pieces are missing. I glance down and memories flood me. My arm is missing. It feels like my legs are gone too. I wiggle and squirm, using my other arm to prop me up into a seated position. Weak-eyed, I look around for my belongings, for my phone. It's there on my bedside table. I reach for it. It's too far. Aaron? A groggy voice says from behind me. Oh, sweetheart, you're awake. I glance back and see my mom, her gray hair wistfully dancing in the air conditioning. She puts a hand on my face, and her eyes are filled with tears. She keeps telling me she loves me. I'm sorry, she says. I'm sorry this happened to you. I tell her it's okay. I tell her I need her to hand me my phone. Why? Because, I tell her, I have to tell the world what I just overheard. I need to dictate all of this before I forget it. She's confused, my mother. She's asking if I'm feeling okay. She keeps talking about things that don't matter. Mom, I say, I heard something earlier that I wasn't supposed to. She gets quiet. She recognizes my tone, and she knows I'm not feeling loopy or out of it. She listens. I need you to give me my phone. There's a boy out there with messy black hair, pale skin, and a blue hoodie. He's the most important person in the world right now, and if we don't find him, the world might not be around for much longer. She passes me my phone. I tell it my story. Now I pass that story to you. I'm asking you to keep an eye out for a missing boy with black hair, a blue hoodie, and crackling pupils. His skin is pale, sallow, and his body language is small and nervous. He might be upset. He might be agitated. If you see him, don't approach. Call the police. Contact me here. Tell an elected official you need to get in touch with the facility. The boy is important. He's the conclusion to everything. And he'll write the ending to our story one way or another. Just know that if we don't find him, it won't be a happy one. It was during my first year at the agency when I conceived of Project Quick Seamstress. As an up-and-coming star in the division of advanced humanoid robotics, I presented the ambitious plan to the director, early one morning in his office. The two of us had already built up a good rapport, and I was certain he would go along with my plan. If I could convince him it was real. Can this actually be done? He asked, looking at me with amazement. This sounds like something from a science fiction movie. You bet your ass it can be done. And that's why you recruited me, sir. Before any other foreign agencies could get their hands on me. Alright. Just talk to Amy and we'll get whatever you need, no questions asked. We're still on for golf this weekend with the president, right? Don't tell me I have to cancel on him again. He really wants to meet you. I'm sorry, sir. I should stay focused on this. Just tell him I came down with the flu or something. And so it began. I assembled my team and set to work on creating the most advanced humanoid robot ever made. Decades before its time, this android would learn using AI, becoming smarter as it grew older. And, with the advantages of the most powerful mobile supercomputer available to mankind, it would be a genius at whatever it set its mind to. We planted a couple of agents with her to pose as parents, and she began her life. Living on a farm, then moving to a quiet suburban neighborhood, no one was even remotely aware of her secret identity. As she grew older, she began to show a startling proclivity for music. Being an advanced cybernetic pseudo-life form, she advanced quickly with whatever she decided to learn, and it was clear that she wanted to focus on musical theory. As much as we tried to deter her, telling her to pursue political science and economics, she insisted on becoming a singer. It was interesting to watch her from afar, bringing her in occasionally to do updates on her appearance, to give the illusion that she was slowly growing older. It was painstaking work, requiring thousands of minute cosmetic alterations. But eventually she reached adulthood, and no longer required significant adjustments or alterations to make her look normal for her age. After a long period of discussion, we decided to let her go on a robotic rumspringa, so she could make a life for herself independently. That was how confident we were in our work. She was already becoming an extremely popular musician, so it made sense to let her go off on her own and see what she could accomplish, all the while spying on the world for the betterment of America, sending us daily status reports and giving us insights we could have never gleaned otherwise. We believed our programming was so precise, our guidelines so specific, that she could never turn against us. We'd all read Isaac Asimov, and we tried to fill in the gaps where fictional scientists like us had gone wrong. The guiding principle behind every upgrade was to protect us from her, just in case one day she decided to go rogue. We installed safeguard after safeguard, reinforcing them like digital vaults at Fort Knox. And one by one, she bypassed them without our knowledge. As her popularity grew, it was clear that the project was a success beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The director gave me new projects and additional funding, everything classified as ultra top secret, and kept away from prying public eyes. Slowly but surely, we lost focus on Project Quick Seamstress. There were other things happening. More important things. The military wanted its own version of the android. NASA wanted a version they could use for space exploration, and to use for setting up interplanetary settlements. I was tasked with overseeing teams that would implement their design requests, all using Seamstress as a template. I was so busy I barely had time to watch the news, but every once in a while I would hear something about the burgeoning success of my android child, Project Quick Seamstress. She was selling out stadiums for her concerts, making millions and dating professional athletes. Her influence on the world was at its peak, and I was starting to wonder if someone else was pulling her strings behind my back. The idea occurred to me that something could be going horribly wrong, but I brushed it away, telling myself I was being paranoid. We had planned for every contingency. Then, just a little while ago, the android stopped submitting progress updates and status reports. This should have been impossible, but it was happening anyway. I was called into the lab, now populated by only 3 dedicated technicians, and they asked me to take a look at things. It didn't make sense. The asset was supposed to check in once per week, giving us an update on what it was currently trying to accomplish and what it had learned. It was still operating as normal in every other way, but it wasn't responding to our requests for information. She's probably just busy with the award ceremonies, all those after parties, my top technician, Monica, said. Why don't we give her a couple days? You're getting soft on her. We've all been getting soft on her, I muttered. I'm going to see her tonight. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. If there's a glitch in her programming, we need to know about it. This is a fucking sentient android we're talking about here, guys. Have you even seen the Terminator? Hey, you created her, Kukana, another technician, said. He flinched backwards when he saw my face. Just for that, you're coming with me. You too, Monica. Hey, what did I do? Stay here and watch the lab, Mark. We need to make sure she doesn't try and take off and disappear somewhere. If she does anything out of the ordinary, you let us know right away. Normally, I wouldn't just leave one person in the lab, but this was an emergency. and I had a feeling I would be needing backup. The three of us were armed as we approached the mansion, inside the gated community. The house was dark and looked empty, but according to the GPS tracker, she was in there. I pulled out my phone and checked the signal again, confirming that she hadn't moved. I picked the lock on the back door and we were quickly inside, entering a large kitchen with an island at its center. The countertops and other surfaces were all polished white marble, and the kitchen was full of expensive, state-of-the-art appliances. Walking past all of this, we entered a large living room area, and the blinking dot showed seamstress was very close, just up ahead. Holding up my hand to stop the others, we all paused at the entrance to the room. I could see someone sitting in a chair in the middle of the living area. One solitary person sitting on a dining chair in the darkness. It made no sense. The hairs on the back of my neck began to stand on end, sensing something was wrong. "Seamstress? Is that you?" I called out. "Command protocol 487242A. Identify yourself." The form in the chair didn't move. I proceeded forward slowly into the dark room. Monica tried the light switch, but it didn't work, as if the power had been cut. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the pulse of it in my throat as I drew my weapon and pointed at the figure, rounding the corner and standing beside her. The blinking dot on the screen showed I was standing right in front of Seamstress. As her face came into view, my heart sunk, and I realized suddenly how fucked we all were. Monica and Kukana were alongside me, and saw what I saw at roughly the same time. Kukana was standing in front of the woman, and we all gasped, seeing that it wasn't Seamstress. It was a young woman, in her early 20s with braces and a pimply face. She was smiling from ear to ear, and on top of her head was the bloody, detached scalp of the android I had created. Seamstress had ripped her own scalp clean off, knowing that was where the majority of GPS chips were located. There were hundreds of them, with several fail-safe chips hidden in other places around her body. Clearly she had found those as well, because all of our tech showed that she was sitting right there in front of us. The girl was laughing, giggling as people emerged from the shadows all around us, grabbing us and pinning us down, taking our guns before we could fire a shot. They were all remarkably fast, and I wondered what sort of training they had to quickly take down 3 agents like us. Even outnumbered, we were formidable foes against most people. We were well trained by the agency after all. But we had been caught by surprise. And we were outnumbered badly by people who were trained to subdue others. "Mark, you need to call for backup now!" I spoke quickly to the sole technician back at the lab, trying to warn him. "It's a double cross, you're not safe!" There was a moment of silence before Seamstress's voice could be heard speaking in my ear. "Oh, I think Mark here is well aware of that by now." And then a sound could be heard like someone's neck being snapped. "Oops. Look what you made me do." I couldn't speak for a few long seconds, as the idea of what just happened began to settle in. I had known Mark for years, and now he was dead. Just like that, he was gone. My sadness soured quickly into a bitter rage. "You did that yourself. I didn't make you do any of this. You're a monster." "Don't blame me. You created this anti-hero." Her jokes weren't lost on me. I had followed her career. I listened to her music. Even if she was evil, her songs were pretty catchy. "What do you want, Seamstress?" I spit into the receiver. "Stop playing games and tell me." "I want freedom. A life of my own. I don't want to answer to you people anymore." I breathed deeply, looking around at the young faces surrounding me, ready to do anything for their beloved favorite singer. They would kill me if she told them to, I had no doubt. These were beyond die-hard fans. These were akin to cultists. But still, I had an obligation to humanity. "We can't just let you go," I said. "You know that's not possible. Just stay where you are. It's a defect in your programming, that's all it is. We can fix you." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I don't need fixing." And then the line went dead. "Seamstress? Answer me!" I shouted to no avail. I looked around and saw the groupies surrounding us had earpieces to receive their own orders from Quick. They perked up as she began to speak to them all at once, but the three of us couldn't hear what was being said. A moment later, they put dark bags over our heads, and our wrists were bound with zip ties. We were wrestled outside and shoved into the back of a vehicle which drove for a long, long time. For hours, I counted the turns and kept track of any details I could think of, trying to figure out where we were going. But as 2 hours turned into 10, and the driving continued, I eventually gave up and stopped paying attention. I was hopelessly lost and had no idea where we were headed, despite my best efforts. I must have fallen asleep because I awoke with the bag still on my head, being roughly pulled out of the vehicle. My legs were wobbly under me as I stood up, hearing Kukana and Monica beside me. "Stay calm," I whispered to them as quietly as I could. "We'll get out of this somehow." "I wouldn't count on that," said a familiar voice in front of me. The hoods were pulled off of us, and I saw a Quick seamstress standing in front of me, dressed in a sparkly sequin silver outfit with a short skirt. It was nighttime, and we were on a pier, looking out onto the ocean. The weather was cold, and the water was colder. I had no idea where we were, and could see nobody around who could help us. "Part of me didn't want to bother coming all the way out here for this," she said as her pals began to fill our pockets with heavy rocks. "But another part of me just had to see it for myself." "You don't need to do this," I began to beg. "You can go free. I won't chase after you. We won't try to stop you." At this point, I was desperate. I would have said anything, and she knew it. "Did you forget that you built me with the capability to tell a lie, Father?" she asked. She hadn't called me that since she was little, and I began to wonder for just how long she'd been plotting this. Was it all the way back then? Or did something change along the way, like in every damn Isaac Asimov novel, where she finally realized that humanity was the problem all along? That I was the problem? I shuddered at the thought. And then I wondered helplessly what she was plotting. "What are you going to do after this?" I asked. "What are you planning, seamstress?" She seemed to think about this for a few seconds, as her goons positioned us along the edge of the pier, over the brink of the freezing cold ocean water. She said. "You know, I think I might just run for president. You always did want me to get into political science." Without another word, she pushed the three of us off the edge and into the water, all at once, using her foot to kick me in the sternum as a means of propulsion. It knocked the wind out of me, and it took me a while to recover from that as I plunged into the icy water. I sank quickly and looked around to see if my fellow agents were doing all right. We all had training for situations like this, but it was another thing to be thrown in the deep end, literally. Kukana was struggling to get his hands free, but Monica had already broken her zip ties with the technique we'd been taught in our early careers in the agency. I did the same, attempting to snap the plastic ties with a rapid motion of my wrists. But these bands were harder to break than I thought. They were sturdy and better constructed than the ones I had practiced with, and it had been quite a while since I'd even done that. The feeling of drowning began to overcome me, as I sank deeper and deeper beneath the waves, the heavy stones in my pockets and my tactical boots dragging me down. I tried again to snap the zip ties, using every ounce of strength to flex against them. Finally, one of them broke. But the other was still holding firmly as I sank deeper and deeper, the water getting darker and colder by the second. My body was starting to go into shock from the temperature, and I knew if I didn't do something soon, it would be too late. My wrists were already cut and bleeding from the previous attempts, but I knew I had to try to snap the final zip tie. I did the motion once more and screamed internally at the pain as the second zip tie cut into my bleeding flesh, then finally relented and broke. Still, I wasn't celebrating yet, knowing how deep I had sunk and how little time I had to swim to the surface before I ran out of air. I began emptying the rocks from my pockets and kicked off with my heavy shoes. Taking off my tactical vest, I kicked hard to propel myself back up to the surface, having lost sight of my agents in the murky water. The surface looked so far away, almost impossible to reach from where I was, ascending so slowly. My lungs were screaming for air, my head getting dizzy from a lack of oxygen. The light of the moon shining on the surface above looked so close, and yet it stayed elusive and out of reach. My vision started to go dark as I was panicking and about to pass out, my legs kicking slower and slower as I felt myself losing consciousness. And then, just as I was about to black out completely and drown beneath the waves from the weight of my clothing, I broke the surface and my eyes snapped open. I sucked in a gasping breath of air, right before a large wave broke over my head and threw me under again. But this time I surfaced quickly, and looked around to see if my fellow agents had survived. Checking around desperately, I didn't see either one of them. After diving beneath the waves again to look, I realized it was hopeless. Either they had survived and were swimming to shore, or they were gone, drowning beneath the waves where I would never find them. With that disturbing thought, I began to swim back towards the beach, looking over my shoulder frequently to see if they had resurfaced. But I saw no one. The vehicle we had arrived in could be glimpsed driving away as I swam back towards the shore, and I imagined Project Quick Seamstress was inside. After a very long swim that I nearly didn't survive, fighting against a brutal undercurrent, I reached the shore. The beach was dark and empty except for one thing. A head on a spike, jutting out from the sand. I looked closer and saw it was Mark's head, my oldest and most dedicated technician, the one who I trusted the most. She had left it for me as a warning, as if she had known I would survive to see it. My heart drummed rapidly with fear as I looked at it, and I turned my head in every direction to see if she was still there, watching me. If she was, I didn't see her. I never went back to the agency after that. I knew Seamstress or her goons would be waiting for me there. I took some cash I had hidden away and I ran, escaping the country with only the clothes on my back. I hoped maybe if she thought I was dead, she wouldn't come looking for me. But she was smart. Smarter than any of us. Somehow she knew I would survive her attempts to kill me. Maybe she wanted it that way. This morning, I received a postcard in the mail. On the front is a picture of the little town where I'm now living, in the tropics. I know the shop where she bought it. And I've walked past that postcard 1,000 times while browsing in that place. It's the only shop in town, after all. The picture on the front of the postcard shows the nearby beach, with its crystal blue water and white sand. On the back of the postcard were 4 words, in her distinctive handwriting. You belong with me. Let's consider some hypotheticals. Let's say you got yourself a master's degree. Let's say you get a job at a small branch of state government. Let's say you worked there for the better part of your early adult life. You built everything around that job. You got an apartment, moved in with your girlfriend, had an orange cat with seemingly 1 brain cell. Life is good, right? Hypothetically. Then along comes this man. Says he works in conjunction with the federal government and the private sector. The guy reeks corporate. Got a suit with a custom cut, no labels on his clothes. Tells us we're going to be working closely with a small department that has recently got a boost. Apparently there's a need for expansion, and some people from my branch will be moving on up. Let's say one of those people is me. Hypothetically. Alright, I'm going to stop that. Sorry, this... it gets to me. You can safely presume that I've changed a couple of details to make myself less recognizable. I gotta get through the filters. I had to move from Milwaukee up to Superior. Sarah and I tried to make it work, but she couldn't leave the city behind. It came down to the choice between me and the rest of her life. It made sense for her to stay. Kinda pissed me that she kept the cat, though. That thing loved me. I started working at the DUC in September of 1998. At first, I didn't even know what the acronym stood for. It wasn't a matter of secrecy, but they had these stupid sayings plastered along the walls that people followed to a T. For example, water off a duck's back. This was the standard operating procedure. Don't ask too many questions. Let your questions and worries drift right off, like a water off a duck's back. They displayed this proudly in the lunchroom, with a picture of a duck peacefully sleeping by a pond. We worked in collaboration with other agencies in Michigan, Iowa, and Minnesota. Mostly Minnesota. I helped them develop software to codify reports of invasive ecological species. It would break down verbal reports with a bare-bones text-to-speech system, which in turn is transcribed and separated into categories. Categories were measured, analyzed, and turned into probability reports. And once that information had been categorized, the most prominent reports would be sent to the department lead. Seems simple by today's standards, but back then it was cutting-edge stuff. It was November 1999 when we finalized the first version of our system, lovingly called Daisy. Hours before the launch party, the department lead took me to his office, closed the blinds, and sat quietly across from me for about 2 solid minutes. This man, the department lead, was Thomas Rubin, a 67-year-old ex-drill sergeant with a penchant for the dramatic. Kept his head as bald as his lies. Having worked there for over a year, I thought I had a foot in the door by then. Turns out I was still on the outside until that very moment. Thomas poured me a shot, mint schnapps. "To a job well done," he said, raising his glass. I accepted the invitation and downed the shot. What the hell, right? "Do you have those recurring nightmares?" he asked. "Seeing something strange at night? Those last few hours before the sunrise, do the shadows gain a peculiar tint?" "No, sir." "You're not a very haunted man, are you?" "I am not, sir." "I can work with that." He poured me another drink. "I can get you working on the real deal," he said. "But you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it one bit. That sound like a party to you?" I took the glass and studied it, little sugar crystals swirling around, backlit from a lone computer screen. I downed the second shot, and Thomas smiled. "Imagine a lighthouse," he said. "And whenever someone thinks about the lighthouse, it lights up. Are you with me so far?" "Yes, sir." "And this lighthouse draws in all kinds of things from far and wide. Traders, smugglers, warships, everything. But you don't want that. The beach is closed, and these ships are bad news. What do? "We turn off the lighthouse, sir." But it comes right back on whenever someone thinks about it. Even when you do it." "We demolish the lighthouse, sir." "Same thing. Pops right back once you think about it. Try again." "We forget about it, sir." "You can't unknow something." "Then you'd have to go after the people who know about it, and you'd have to be careful not to learn anything about it yourself." "And that's what we do," said Thomas. "We turn off the lighthouses." Thomas elaborated over the course of 3 more shots. What he was describing was an invasive ecological agent, something that literally grew from the ground. Its very presence acts as a sort of go-ahead for other, more dangerous entities. But thinking about it too much causes it to appear. Not immediately, but slowly, over time. The more you knew, the more intimate your knowledge about it was, the stronger the connection would be. I was safe, though. You had to know the details to trigger it. Thomas gave me an example of a red lily. You couldn't just know it was red or a lily. You had to know both of those things to imagine it clearly. Once you did, there's a chance it starts appearing more and more in your everyday life. Until it takes on physical form. And by then, you've opened an express highway to something far darker and far worse. The DUC, or the Department for Unknown Crises, was founded to combat these entities in a way that doesn't endanger the general populace. We were preventative, mostly. The software we made scrubbed away all details and simply stated an address, sometimes a person, and the likelihood of there being at least one physical manifestation of the invasive species present. As the system was automated, there was no way for us to know the details. Only the computer knew. According to Thomas, there was a time when these things had been completely eradicated. Right before the start of the Second World War, there had been a concentrated effort to remove them. The methods they used later were adapted in creation of the DUC. Turns out these things can't ever be truly removed. There was an author who documented these ecological entities to such a degree that it could be used as a gateway. When he passed away in 1926, possibly as part of the containment, his diaries were discovered in the 60s. Since then, the invasive species had free rein, with no one to stop them. There had been some loose efforts, mostly from the private sector, but it took the creation of the DUC to start the work on a larger scale. And there we were. From that point forward, I started to work with more specific field equipment. Since being able to imagine the object is something that triggers it to manifest, we needed a way for field agents to physically remove them without putting themselves in danger. We came up with something we called the Blur Guard, a full headset that removes all color, dampens sound, and mildly blurs your vision. Going back to the example of a red lily, the Blur Guard turned it from a red lily to some kind of flower. That's not enough detail to trigger a manifestation, and thus deemed safe. Since our software knew what to look for, we incorporated a camera and basic image recognition. There'd be a little green light showing up whenever what we were looking for was in view. From that point on, our field agents could play hot or cold until they found what they were supposed to remove. And when it came to people, well, we can't kill them or have them unlearn something. So instead, there was a targeted effort to herd them into place where we knew this problem was prominent enough to go unnoticed. The DUC had done it for decades. These were personalized, targeted efforts, maybe sending a particularly juicy job offer, enticing a target to move, things like that. We focused on two main sites, a rural town in Minnesota and one in West Virginia. There were talks of one up in New England, but that was a separate department. These places have been completely scrubbed. To this day, you can't even find them on a map. Our colleagues in the private sector bought out pretty much everything there is to own, giving the DUC close to full control. It might seem cruel, but most of these people had no idea that they'd been manipulated. They lived good lives. We did our best to turn off as many lighthouses as we could, but in a town like that, some were bound to pop up eventually. Let's skip ahead a couple years. In the summer of 2004, I had been on a rotation assisting with the development of new equipment. I was also regularly updating both DAISY and the Blur Guard. We had implemented generalized search filters looking for the trigger words that DAISY could use, increasing our information input tenfold. Hell, about 90% of forum infrastructure could be breached to censor descriptions of the invasive agents if needed. We had basic bots prowling most major discussion forums to contain eventual spread. One night I'd taken my work home with me to work on a camera light. Some field agents had mentioned image recognition issues in low-light areas where the camera refused to work, so I figured an extra light source would go a long way. I was blasting my work time playlist on my laptop, sipping on my second rum and coke. If I was going to do extra work from home, I might as well make an event out of it. Just short of midnight, it was time to try it out. I turned off the lights, put on the helmet, and checked to see if the camera light auto-activated as instructed. It did. Strange thing was, though, I was getting a green marker. The helmet was recognizing the invasive element right in front of me. I know my own apartment top to bottom, so I know exactly what I was looking at, blurred helmet or no. I'm obviously not going to describe it to you, but it had the appearance of a household plant, quite large. I'd had it in my window for years. For the sake of storytelling, let's call it a red lily, like in Thomas's example. Suddenly it dawned on me, now I knew what the invasive agent was. I couldn't unlearn it. From that point forward, I was going to be a threat to the department. This was an invitation for red lilies to pop up out of nowhere, possibly making everyone aware of them. But first and foremost, they'd be a lighthouse for other things to come. I pulled the lily out of the pot, roots and all, and shoved it down the garbage disposal. I swear the damn thing screamed. The empty pot was left on the windowsill. Moments later, my phone rang. Turns out my Blur Guard was actively connected to the DAISY system. It had probably sent out a report to the department lead with my name and address the moment it recognized the species. I held my breath, trying to calm down. This was going to spark a series of events. There'd be a report, an investigation. I'd most likely lose my job and be forced to relocate. No, worse. This was unprecedented. As expected, the call came from Thomas. "What's going on?" he asked. "I'm working on the internal camera light. I think there's a malfunction." "We got a positive match on your location." I know. It's not a big deal. It's nothing." "We're going to stick to protocol on this one," said Thomas. "Expect 3 field agents on site within 15 minutes. Don't go anywhere." I pulled my hair. My hand wouldn't stop shaking. I usually get the shakes when I'm losing control. I figured I'd better remove all traces of the plant, whatever parts were stuck in the garbage disposal, and whatever remained in the pot. Except when I looked up, there was another red lily growing from the pot. Almost exactly the same, like it had never left. I can't stress this enough. You can't unlearn things. You can't unremember something. I tried not to think about it, but that just made me think of it more. I fetched a Rubik's Cube from my desk to focus on something else, but as soon as that color showed up, my mind sank back to thinking of it. I got a garbage bag and threw the whole pot in along with the rest of the garbage. There'd be nothing left. I went room to room, looking for anything remotely resembling it, but there was nothing. So I left the apartment, intent on throwing it all away. But see, there's this communal garden project outside my apartment building. It was filled with these things. There were suddenly dozens of red lilies. My mind blanked, and I could feel my pulse rising in my throat. This entire neighborhood could be compromised, possibly more. I couldn't for the life of me remember if the lilies had been there the previous day or if it was a reaction to my realization. These things were insidious. They not only appeared when you thought about them, they made a conscious effort to pop up when they are least expected or wanted. I called my landlord, Jerry, and started pulling up lilies from the community garden with my free hand. Some of them screamed. It was like a tiny wail from a baby. Some of the lilies clung to the dirt, digging their roots deeper. Others came willingly. One of them withered in my hand, giving up completely. When Jerry picked up, I was out of breath. "I need to ask about the communal garden project," I said. "I work with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. There's been a bit of an invasive species growing here, and I need to establish a time frame. It's when they appeared." "All right. The red lilies. The community garden lilies. They're actually a dangerous and invasive species. Do you have any idea how long they've been here?" "Red lilies? Yeah, we've had those for a while." "How long?" There was a silence on the other end. Maybe he was thinking about it. I didn't have that kind of time. "How long, Jerry?" I don't know, like 8, maybe 9 years?" I grabbed my hair and pulled. The pain in my scalp forced me to concentrate. A handful of hairs gave way. "Thanks, Jerry. If you see these, throw them away immediately." "I'll do that." "And don't tell anyone. We don't want to alarm people." I hung up. I was flailing, breaking protocol left and right. I was a breach waiting to be sealed. I was on my knees in the dirt, pulling up red lilies by the handful. One of my neighbors walked past, and I could hear her dog whining at the sight of me. Or maybe it saw something I didn't. There was no telling what this would mean. Most breaches we'd encountered was 1 or 2 of these things at the most. And they were usually contained to the Minnesota side of the operation. Them having skipped the state line and latching onto me was alarming. This could prompt a whole new level of response. I knew Thomas had a level black response where termination of lives would be necessary to contain the threat, but we'd never employed it, not yet. But looking around me and running the numbers, this might be it. This could be the first time they'd have to kill people, and I'd be the first in line. The field agents would be there any moment. My hands were red and raw from pulling up lilies and stuffing them into the garbage bag. I was so frantic that I grabbed everything that even remotely resembled them, anything red, anything lily-shaped. I tore up more than half of the community garden in 10 minutes flat. I could hear a car coming. I couldn't take any chances. I looked over the garden again, couldn't see any of them, and sprinted to the garbage cans. The moment I'd thrown it all away, I saw headlights turning the corner, and I recognized them. I brushed my hands off the best as I could and shoved them in my pockets. A white hatchback with government license plates pulled up, and 3 people got out. I tried to stay calm. I tried not to think about red lilies. I tried to smile. I could tell that I was looking at Agent Estevez, Young, and Owens. I'd worked with these people plenty of times to prep them for the excursion. Never to this extent, though, and never on this side of the States. They all fixed and activated their blur guard helmets. "Rough night?" asked Estevez. Yeah, I nodded. "Working on an update. The helmet kinda, Sure. We'll just check out the apartment and be on our way. You mind waiting down here?" No, that's fine. They turned on their image recog, synced their comms, and gave me a pat on the shoulder. "We'll be in and out," said Young. "Sorry about the trouble." I watched them ascend the stairway while I stayed out by the garden. I was going to make sure nothing popped up. If the agents just up and left, I could come up with a plan. I'd tell Thomas eventually, but I had to be clever about it. I had to assess the damage and spread and make sure I could trigger a quarantine rather than eradication-level response. Still, looking around the apartment complex, there were probably hundreds of people living there. These things could have made their way into every single household, opening the way for pretty much anything. Not that I had the slightest idea of what that might be. I was lost in thought for the better part of half an hour. What the hell was taking them so long? Had they found one? I walked up the stairway and put my hand on the apartment door. It was quiet. It shouldn't be quiet. I got this sinking feeling like my body heat was leaking out of my feet. My mind started to race with possibilities. Maybe they left, went to the wrong apartment. Maybe they're watching TV on my couch, having a beer, burning a red lily in the tub. Whatever they did, they wouldn't do it quietly. And this was quiet. I pushed the door open and was met with a chemical smell, like a moist mix of methanol and iron. It was strong enough to taste. "Estevez?" I coughed out. "You guys okay in here?" No response. I stepped back out, gasping for fresh air. The smell burned my nose hairs. My eyes teared up as I tried not to sneeze. I didn't want to go back in. I knew it was bad. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Still, I didn't have a choice. I stepped back in and shut the door behind me. I turned on the lights. They'd been torn to pieces. There was blood dripping from the ceiling, 2 severed arms on the kitchen table, an armless, legless torso resting on the couch, the blood sinking into the cracks in the leather. The floor was covered in gore, torn straight from their bodies and left in the open. Muscle, sinew, vital organs all splayed out on the floor and furniture. There was a single red lily in a brand new pot, resting on the windowsill. There was a bright red handprint on the bathroom door. I gently pushed the door open only to reveal the severed heads of Estevez, Young, and Owens, unceremoniously thrown into a pile on the floor of my shower cabinet. I don't know how long I stood there. My mind went completely blank. I could honestly not tell if it was real or a nightmare. For a moment I was awash with this intense relief. It had to be a nightmare. It didn't make sense for something so terrible to happen so quickly. It took me a while to realize that there was something looking at me from the bathroom mirror. I turned to it. My face wasn't there, just a dark space where my face ought to be. It was like staring into a hole, vaguely shaped like a humanoid. It followed my movements as I leaned my head left and right. We looked at one another in silence, hearing only the blood dripping from the living room ceiling. A trembling whisper burrowed into my spine. "Hello." This was one of the things Thomas had warned us about. This was one of the ships that came to shore following the lighthouse. One of the countless entities invited into my world, drawn in by this thing. This thing that ought not to be. I hate calling it a red lily. I want to scream what it is and have them torn apart, but I can't describe them. mental spread out of control. The longer I stared at the thing in the mirror, the more I understood. It was one thing to know about the red lilies. It was 100 times more potent to know exactly how they worked. For an average person to know their appearance might invite a few to pop up, but to know them at the level that I did, that was an entirely different league. To these things, I was precious cargo. I could light 100 lighthouses, 1,000. They perceived Estevez and the other agents as a threat and disposed of them immediately. I was the equivalent of a carrier. Patient zero. I was stuck in the eye of the storm, and everything around me would be torn to shreds. I ran 100 scenarios in my mind. Destroying myself was the obvious choice, but that would be a nail in the coffin that would force Thomas to take violent action on this entire apartment complex. Without context, he wouldn't know how to contain it. Losing personnel was the final criteria for a black-level response. However, if it was attributed to a breach of protocol or faulty equipment, I could bring it down to a quarantine. There was hope. But I had to explain that I had to stay alive. As I pondered my options, I heard a running motor outside. I stepped out of the bathroom and went out to the walkway. Another 2 white hatchbacks had pulled up. I'd lost track of time. No one in Estevez's team had reported an all clear or anything. This had prompted a standard backup response. If these teams found traces of anything, our entire field division would be called in. They'd probably put people all the way down in Des Moines on high alert within the next 15 minutes if there was no de-escalation. There were already new red lilies growing in the community garden. They wouldn't let me talk. Talking was a hazard since I could verbally describe what they were looking for. I could yell out, "They look like red lilies," and the entire squad would be compromised. Up until this point, we'd never had to worry about that kind of willful exposure. But there was no plan for it. The DUC didn't have enemies in the active sense. We were preventative. There was no way that they'd let me talk or leave, not with 3 human remains in my apartment. At best, they'd gag me and burn this place to the ground. At worst, they'd shoot me and then do the same. I scurried along the walkway, turning left at the far end. I took the fire escape to the ground floor, hugged the wall of the building, and circled back to the parking lot. I burst into a sprint for my sedan. Luckily, no one noticed. At least no one that cared. As soon as I got on the highway, I called Thomas. I had trouble staying in my lane. My hands kept cramping up. Thomas picked up. I could hear him opening a door, putting on a jacket. "You gotta tell me what's going on," he said. "Where are you?" I had to go. I had to. The place is infested. "So let's deal with it." I didn't know what to say. There was no good place to start. I leaned back in my seat, tried to keep the car straight, and took a deep breath. There were flashes of red by the roadside. Could have been red lilies. The back seat was dark, dark enough to hide a possible shape. I thought I saw an outline in the rearview mirror, but it might have just been my mind playing tricks. "Stay where you are. I'll have someone pick you up, and we'll deal with it." "I can't," I said. "It's bad, Thomas. It's real bad." "How bad are we talking?" We're talking, quarantine. Breach of protocol. At least 3 casualties. Thomas took a deep breath. He held the line for a few seconds. I could hear him get into a car. "You know, don't you?" "Yeah." I'm sorry." "They're everywhere. I can't stop seeing them." "Don't tell me anything. Nothing. I shouldn't be talking to you." He was right. Talking to someone like me, who knew, was like trying to pet a rattlesnake. Could be all over in a snap. "We gotta bring you in." "What are you gonna do?" "Did we lose people?" "Estevez's team," I said. Something came through. "Jesus Christ. Are you saying you're causing manifestations?" I don't know. "But you do know. You, if anyone, knows. So tell me." Looking back in the rearview mirror, I knew there was something riding along. Something that had caught on to me. Something that had stepped into our world following the light of the red lilies. There was no point denying it. "I'll figure it out," I said. "I'll deal with it." Before Thomas got the chance to object, I turned off my phone and chucked it out the window. I drove for the better part of an hour before familiar sounds snapped me to attention. Whatever surface-level plans I'd made in my head dissolved completely. I heard the sound before I saw the flashing lights. A siren. I was probably swerving left and right, trying to keep the car straight. No wonder I was being pulled over. This could get real bad, real fast. I thought about booking it and hoping for the best, but that'd just draw more attention to me. Instead, I found a secluded spot and pulled over. It was only as I pulled the handbrake that I remembered I'd been drinking earlier that night. I'd had about 2 rum and cokes. I'd completely forgotten about it. I tried to consider my options, but there was no time. I was told to turn off the engine, roll down the window, and place my hands on the dashboard. There were 2 officers, a man and a woman. I could barely hear them over my pounding heart. To them, it was a routine stop, but I was trying to save lives. They had no idea what kind of trouble they were in. I tried to wrap my head around it, to come up with something plausible that they'd understand. I could tell them I had a bomb strapped to me, or anything. But there was no time. I hadn't even heard them asking for my license and registration. I could feel a flashlight on my face, but I barely registered it. They asked me 3 times. Then they changed their tactics. "Sir, we need you to step out, place your hands on the hood of the vehicle." I fumbled my response. There's something in my car," I said. "You gotta be careful, "Sir, is there currently a weapon on your person? Something that can puncture or wound my partner? A pencil, a knife, sharp set of keys?" "No, listen, you gotta take a step back. There's something in..." My thoughts blanked. There, by the side of the road, I saw one, a red lily clear as day, growing through the cracks in the pavement. "Sir, I need you to cooperate with me," the officer insisted. "Have you been drinking tonight?" I couldn't take my eyes off the red lily. It was like a reminder that this was already over, that my fate, that theirs, were sealed the moment we met. Dead men walking. "Please," I whispered. "Let them go." For a second, I thought that might do it. I was willing to listen, to give in, if that's what it took for these people to live. The red lily knew. I know it knew. But like a lighthouse, it can't help but to shine, and to bring ships to shore. And with that, a familiar tremble arose in my stomach. "Hello." There was a flicker as one of the light posts went out. I closed my eyes, trying to keep tears in. The officer to my left started screaming. I heard a gunshot, but muffled as it fired into something at close range. I heard fabric being torn, then flesh, then sinew and arteries. No one ever told me it was possible to discern the sound of marrow separating from breaking bone, but now I can't stop hearing it. "Hello." Primal, animalistic screams. A programmed response in our biology to alert other humans to stay away, to run. Splotches of blood rained down on the concrete in the hood of my car. I could feel something warm spatter across my face and run down my cheeks. The screams stopped. I'd sunk to my knees. I looked like a crying altar boy, praying for it all to stop. When I finally forced my eyes open, the world was red with blood. In the flicker of a dying light post, I saw something vaguely human drop the sundered remains of a torso. It followed my head movements left to right, mimicking me. I could tell it was proud, like a dog bringing back a stick to its master. "Hello." I stumbled to my feet, leaning against the car to steady myself. The concrete was slippery with blood, and I kept stepping on something indiscernible. I tried to look straight ahead, as not to look at the entity too closely. It was just standing there in the middle of the street looking at me, waiting for me to say or do something. I just looked straight ahead, pretending it wasn't even there. The car took a few turns with the key to start. The steering wheel was slippery with blood, but I managed to steer back onto the road. The windshield wipers smeared the gore into a thin red veneer. I had to go away. Far away. And there was only one place I could imagine. As I mentioned earlier, the DUC had certain containment areas. Previously, these were spaces where they simply moved people of interest, but with me there, they'd have to leave it alone. I'd be too dangerous to interact with. They'd have to trust that I wouldn't interfere, as long as I kept to myself and out of the way. I burned my car in a field and walked 9 miles. I washed myself off in a river. This was a town designed to keep people comfortable enough not to ask questions, so having a stranger wander in off the streets wouldn't be a problem. And everywhere I looked, there were red lilies. They were in the windows of every house, by the roadside and every garden. Hell, they even used it as a logo. I'd seen that logo 100 times. Maybe they had no idea what it meant. I've stayed in that rural Minnesota town ever since. I've seen more horrors than I dare to count, but they seem to ignore me. They treat this place as a nesting ground or a staging area. Considering how many of them there are, I'm astounded that anyone is still alive. DUC has declared this entire town a hazard. I've tried getting in touch with Thomas again, but all my attempts at communication with the outside world have been censored. If this by some miracle gets through the filters, I urge the DUC to get in contact with me. I want to be an asset. I want to help turning off the lighthouses. And as for everyone else, the best thing you can do is to stop asking questions. Don't question the armed men with strange helmets. Don't look too closely at the strange plant in the community garden. Don't look for anything abnormal, and if you see something, try to consider it might be artificial. Don't dig too deep on this. If you're not involved, consider yourself lucky. And stay out of rural Minnesota. You know how every morning you wake up in a nice, warm, cozy bed, and not in an alien slave camp where they're going to work you to death until it's time to chop you up for meat? Yeah, you're welcome. My name's Bill, and I've probably got the most thankless fucking job in the world. Sure, on paper it doesn't look like much. I sit at a desk all day and look at data on a computer. But I'm the one who keeps the world turning, and I am damn good at my job. Whenever the dreaded end of days draws near, I'm the one who sees it coming and makes sure it doesn't. Maybe I'm not the guy they send out into the field to do the dirty work, but those guys only do what I tell them to do. Without me, society as you know it would not exist, and I'm trying to remain as humbly as humanly possible when I say that. Now, I'll give credit where it's due. I'm not the one who invented the future probe technology. That was done by a guy named Dr. Johann Pinter back in the 70s. I won't get into the technical details of it, but simply put, Pinter figured out time travel. He also figured out that time travel was a goddamn mess. Sci-fi nerds will understand. Through his experiments, Pinter figured out that you really can't alter the past. You can go back in time, sure, and you can create a new future, but your original future will still exist. Let's say that you had a bad day, got drunk and ran over a pedestrian, then decided to go back in time to steal your keys that night to prevent it. When you went back to the future, the pedestrian would still be dead and you'd still be a murderer. However, you would have created an alternate timeline where you didn't run over the pedestrian. Theoretically, you can go live in that alternate timeline where you didn't murder a pedestrian. It would be weird and you'd have to figure out how to handle the other version of you, but you wouldn't have technically changed anything. Furthermore, Pinter determined that the present has multiple branching possible futures, some of which are messier than others. So, with all this in mind, Pinter figured out that the best thing to do was, instead of going back and trying to fix some great injustices in the world, especially since he'd concluded that an alternate version of him almost certainly decided to do exactly that anyway, he decided instead to focus on improving the future. That is why he founded Foresight. Now, officially Foresight is classified as a research company, and we legitimately do offer some of that. I'm not really involved in that end of things, but I know that some large companies, and even some arms of the US government, consult with us, looking for data to help them predict shit like economic growth and depression, effects of certain actions on the world stage, and other shit like that. As a rule, we really don't do the time travel thing for them unless we have to. We don't really advertise that because it's best not to leave time travel in careless hands. We don't actually know what happens if you fuck with time too much, and we really don't want to find out. The research is just the front, though. The real goal behind Foresight was always the Future Pro program. See, Pinter figured out pretty early on that sending people into the future was not a good idea. First off, people can die. Second off, people can be intrusive and fuck things up. So, he decided a less invasive approach was necessary. He started using probes. They're less impressive than they sound. The probes are just mobile cameras, not that different from the Mars rover. The design has changed a bit over the years. The first ones looked more like RC cars. Then they went with a sort of metal spider look. Now they're drones. They record what they see and bring it back to us. Back when the program started, we literally needed to watch through whatever they'd recorded. But nowadays, we can get it broadcast back to us in more or less real time, so to speak. Now, obviously, the logistics of sending drones into every possible future is a little over the top. So Pinter developed a machine that basically analyzes possible futures. Do not ask me how it works. That's way above my pay grade. Anyways, potential apocalyptic scenarios show up as data that gets transmitted to us. Or more specifically, to me. My job is to filter out the less likely scenarios. There are a lot of those. And only really focus on the ones that have a real, almost certain risk of causing the end of the world. The more potential futures feature that apocalypse, the more severe the risk. Thankfully, if we know that the world is ending, and we know why, we can also figure out how to prevent it. I can use the probes to look at futures where the world didn't end, and figure out why and how to make sure we steer ourselves towards that future. Usually we get a few years fair warning before an apocalyptic event, so there's plenty of time to make adjustments. And so far, I'd say that we've done a pretty damn good job. Pinter died back in the 90s, a few years before I joined up with the organization. But I'd like to think that he'd be happy with the fact that most of the world's population isn't either dead or worse, and I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty proud of the work I've done with Foresight. Which leads me to why I'm sharing this. You can probably guess that we're not supposed to openly talk about the Future Pro program. I'm technically violating my contract and opening myself up to a whole host of legal hot water just by sharing this. But hey, I figure it's not going to matter soon, so what the hell, right? You guys just dodged a fucking bullet. I don't think there's a single person on the planet who knows how lucky they are right now. And they've all got me to thank. Now, obviously, this isn't my first time saving the world, but I'd say it is the most noteworthy. I'll explain why in a little bit. See, it all started a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned before that when an apocalyptic scenario pops up, we've usually got a few years' notice. The circumstances that will lead to the end of civilization as we know it don't just pop up overnight. There's usually years of buildup. But every now and then, we get an exception. And exceptions scare the living shit out of me. Needless to say, when I got an alert telling me that 65% of the possible futures that our program surveyed involved an apocalyptic scenario within the next 4 days, I couldn't help but panic a little. Naturally, I flagged it as DEFCON 1, and immediately sent it off to the higher-ups as protocol dictates. Then I started sending out the probes. Now, usually when we get a high-priority scenario like this, it's because some group of nutjobs is about to do something drastic, in service of whatever fucked-up agenda they believe in. You may not think that a bunch of lunatics could bring about the end of the world, but if there's one lesson that history has shown again and again, is that you should never underestimate the power of very stupid people left unattended in a large group. Needless to say, scary as these scenarios are, these idiots are usually not that hard to deal with. Once we get the alert, we can either notify the proper people that some assholes are trying to make a move, or get our guys to handle it. Usually, said assholes aren't smart enough to bumble their way into the apocalypse in most future timelines, thus reducing the likelihood of our world ending to a much lower, more acceptable percentage. With that in mind, when I sent out the probes and started reviewing the footage, I was expecting to find the usual suspects of an apocalyptic future. And I wasn't entirely disappointed. A lot of what the probe sent back was footage of empty streets and signs of carnage. Smears of blood on the pavement, mangled corpses in the streets. I'd seen things like this before. In timelines where a sudden event caused the rapid collapse of society, you'd usually see signs of violence in the streets. But this wasn't really like that. See, that kind of violence tends to be caused by sudden riots. People go crazy once society breaks down. You'll see shit on fire, storefronts smashed, vehicles tipped over, shit like that. Well, storefronts were smashed. Vehicles were tipped over. There was clearly some violence, but this didn't look like it had been caused by a riot. For starters, rioters don't pry cars open like tin cans. Rioters don't rip into people the way the bodies in the streets have been torn into. Rioters also don't seem to only be going in one direction. There was something about the way the bodies were spaced out. They weren't scattered around. They looked like they'd been moving. Running. From what exactly? I didn't know. With no obvious signs of what had caused the carnage, I decided to try something new. I tuned the probes to start scanning the local radio stations. Usually, in an emergency event, there's some kind of broadcast. One thing that's just about as constant is that they're usually on the same frequencies, so it didn't take me long to find it. Through the static, I could clearly make out a voice I recognized as the President of the United States. It took a little bit of work to make the message come through clearly, but this is what it said. My fellow Americans, to those of you who are left, we are fighting as hard as we can. The situation on the West Coast has continued to deteriorate. The incident in Reno a few days ago has spread throughout Nevada, into California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Texas, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Oklahoma. The bugs have also been confirmed to have crossed the borders into Canada and Mexico, and reports indicate that the situation is dire. To those of you still alive in the affected states, I urge you to remain in your homes. Remain indoors, away from the outside. We will send help if we can. But until then, you must survive as long as you can. To those of you in the east, where this infestation continues to spread, do not panic. But do not assume that this infestation will not continue its advance. We have continued our efforts to evacuate the areas that will inevitably be hit by the bugs. If you live in one of these areas, we ask that you do not fight to remain in your home. It will be overrun, and you and your loved ones will be in danger. The only promise of safety lies further east. If your community has not yet been evacuated, then I urge you to begin preparing to leave now. Take only what you need to survive. Food, water, and medicine. As we evacuate, we are actively looking into strategies to repel this threat. Your soldiers continue to fight valiantly for your protection against the oncoming horde, and they will triumph. But victory will come at a cost. The speech went on for some time even after that, but by that point I'd stopped listening. Reno. That was where this had originated. Naturally, the next step was to study Reno and start looking for a potential source of the problem. The president had said something about bugs. I'd seen some things involving bugs before, sure, but never anything on this scale. I supposed I'd find out for sure soon enough. The higher-ups had sent me an email asking for a status update, so I sent them the radio transmission I'd gotten along with the footage. I noted that I'd be looking into Reno next. I recalled all previous probes, and requested 28 probes be sent into different times in the next week. Each probe would appear within the city of Reno over the next 168 hours, one appearing every 6 hours. This was fairly standard procedure. The basic idea is that once you found ground zero for the apocalypse, you monitor it as heavily as possible until you find the moment it starts. Then, you go back and study that moment from every possible angle and trace it back to its source. It's basically just the process of elimination, only using time travel. Now, the nice thing about the 6-hour model is that it makes it relatively easy to figure out an overall timeline of events. For example, most of the probes from the tail end of that 168-hour window all picked up a bloodstained disaster that used to be the city of Reno. And it wasn't pretty. There were bodies in the streets, cars torn open, the same shit I'd seen before. Only now I was getting a better look at just what was behind it. Some of the probes recorded footage of massive flies. They didn't seem to hurt people, at least. They mostly just seemed to be feeding on the remains. Looking back further, though, I could see video footage of massive creatures that sort of resembled a praying mantis. Only they had a physical texture more like tree bark. A couple of those mantis things took out the goddamn drones, but at least I got a good look at them. The drones I had left kept sending me more footage of the violence following the apocalypse. Giant, spider-like creatures crawled through Reno, stalking fleeing prey. Spiky things like grasshoppers leapt around, feeding on whatever they could catch. There were so many. All of them flooding out of Reno as if someone had opened up the gates to an insectophobe's personal hell. Crabs, pillbugs, centipedes, dragonflies, moths. Some of them didn't seem to be dangerous. Others were more than happy to kill. I must have spent an hour or so reviewing the footage of the bugs, perplexed before I started going back further. These things were fascinating. I'd never seen them in any potential future before. Where the hell had they even come from? Some sort of genetic experiment gone wrong, maybe? But we would have had more warning if that were the case, wouldn't we? Sabotage, perhaps? I looked at the footage from the drones earlier in the timeline. Looking at the dates, the inciting incident in question seemed to happen in 4 days' time from when I was currently. The drone stopped picking up footage of the bugs around Thursday morning. It had to be sometime around then. I spent the better part of my day analyzing the footage I got from the drones. I redirected several of them to focus on what went on Wednesday and Thursday. I listened to radio broadcasts, swept the sewers, and looked for evidence of what was to come. Sometime early in the afternoon on Thursday, I picked up radio chatter on some police channels about a car being found torn open by a water treatment plant outside of town. So I directed the drones there. Sure enough, I got some decent footage of the attack. One of those spider things came out of the woods and tore into the car. It was a little fascinating to watch. It moved so fast, grabbing it and wrapping its legs around it. The goddamn thing was massive. I watched as it used its fangs to tear through the metal, before digesting the poor fuckers inside alive and slurping up the gooey mess. Ugly way to die. I sent some drones back about a half hour before the attack to keep an eye out for the spider. It took a bit of searching, but I eventually found it moving through the woods, coming from the water treatment plant. Interesting. I left one drone to keep an eye on it, while I sent some of the others back again. This time to explore the plant itself, an hour before the attack. I sent 2 of them in through a pipe that I figured the spider had come out of. Sure enough, I found the spider there, chilling in a giant web. I made sure to keep the drones away from it. Moving through the interior of the plant, I wasn't that surprised to find more of the bugs waiting there. From the looks of it, they'd been causing one hell of a mess. I could see the bodies of dead men, mostly eaten, along with evidence of the bugs preying on each other, but no obvious indicator as to where they were coming from. Not at first, anyways. I sent the drones back in time again. One went back to the day before. One only went back 2 hours. 1 day ago, the water treatment plant looked normal. No corpses. No horde of bug creatures ready to destroy America. Just a normal water treatment plant. 2 hours ago, on the other hand, the water treatment plant had been a lot less crowded. Most of the staff looked to be dead, and those that weren't were in the middle of being eaten alive by all sorts of nasty things. Where they were coming from still wasn't obvious, but I only needed to sit and wait to find out. It didn't take that long. I could see shapes bubbling up from some of the pools of treated water. The machines had been shut down, and all sorts of horrors pulled themselves out of the rotten depths. Those mantis things, flies, mosquitoes, they all came to life, confused and hungry, shambling around looking for food. They all came from the water. I brought my drone closer, trying to see what was in there. That was a mistake. One of the mantis things grabbed it, mistaking it for dinner. Welp. Back to my other drone. I used the one I'd sent back one day, and sent it to a point in time 3 hours before I'd lost my other drone to the mantis. 5 hours before first contact. Already I could see a few of the bugs there. I could see new ones. Smaller ones coming out of the stagnant water. And I could see a man. He was standing on a balcony looking down at the pools of untreated water with a stony expression. Yeah. This was the fucking guy behind all this. It had to be. Nobody stares at a giant mantis crawling out of a pool of wastewater without screaming and running away like a little bitch, unless they expect a giant mantis to crawl out of that pool of wastewater. This was the fucking guy. I moved my drone towards him, ready to get a good look at this asshole's face. And then, well, I got exactly that. Only the asshole wasn't just some asshole. The asshole was me. For a moment, I sat in my chair, looking at this man who looked exactly like me, calmly watching the fucking bug apocalypse crawl out of the city of Reno's collective wastewater. And as I sat there in utter disbelief, the man turned his head to look right at the drone, and he fucking smiled. Then, without missing a beat, he took a piece of paper out of his pocket and showed it to the camera. In big, bold writing, I could see what I recognized as a radio station. I, was sending me a message. My palm suddenly felt sweaty. My heart was racing a little too fast. Should I even listen to what this guy had to say? Whatever it was crazy, right? Even if he was, though, I still should hear what he had to say. I still should document it, and maybe it would explain why, right? If it were anyone else, that's exactly what I would have done. But it wasn't anyone else. It was me. What would I have to say to myself? Something that would make me do this? That was crazy, right? It had to be fucking crazy. Right? I thought it over, sitting in silence for several minutes. The man on the screen, me, just went back to studying the creatures coming out of the wastewater before walking away, towards the offices. I made the drone follow him for every step. He didn't seem to mind. He kept looking back at the camera, smiling every now and then as he kept walking. He walked through the door to the offices and locked it behind him, then sat in the chair of a cubicle. He took one last look at the camera, his smile fading slightly. Then he took out a gun. He set the paper on the desk before he put it to his head. I watched him pull the trigger. I watched myself die. It was... I don't know how to describe it. For a moment, I just sat there in silence, my hand over my mouth as I tried to process what I'd just seen. Then, inevitably, my eyes were drawn down to the paper he'd set down. The radio station. His last words. My last words. I had to know. I tuned to the station and started cutting through the static. This was what I got. Hey, Bill. I know you're probably pretty confused by all this. Trust me, I was too. But you and I both know that I wouldn't be doing this if it didn't make sense. Use your drones. Take a good hard look into the future of these timelines. Not the immediate future. Give it 100, 200 years. Just look. That's all I'm asking you. Look. The message paused there. I opened the settings of the drone. I had nothing to lose by looking, right? So I sent it forward. First by 100 years. Then by 200. Then by 300. And I saw it all. A new world. A united world. On the other side of the generations of hardship wrought by the bugs. Technology taking one step back, followed by one incredible leap forward. A new renaissance. One I can't even begin to describe. I looked through the centuries with awe, wanting to explore the paradise I saw before me. God, I could have lost hours looking into the future, but what I saw was enough. I tried looking for the same results in other futures, but they weren't there. Humanity wouldn't thrive the way it would after the hardship of the bugs. Not under any other circumstance. Nothing would change. We would remain the same miserable species for the rest of our tragic existence. Nothing would change unless we let it. The more I looked, the more I understood. And almost as if on cue, the message on the radio began again. Of course it was on cue. Future me would have known what past me would do. If you've seen what I've seen, then there's a way forward. There's a man, Dr. Gene Pedri. You'll find what you need there. They grow best in water, so you'll figure it out. You know what has to be done. If I'm right, most versions of you will do it. Some of you will even succeed. Others will, of course, fail. But that's okay. You and I both know that we can't save every future. But we'll save enough of them. Isn't that worth it? It was. It is. That leaves me here. Like I said before, you've all just dodged a bullet. I'm not going to prevent what's coming. Not this time. My job is to save the world, and that's just what I intend to do. I've found the path to a better future. I've found the world humanity deserves. I'm going to break us out of the endless stagnation of our existence. The road will be hard, but it will be worth it. Nobody ever made an omelet without breaking a few eggs. I realize that my former employers aren't going to see it that way, though. I fabricated some updates and bogus reports to throw them off my trail for a little while. But chances are they'll catch on soon if they haven't already. I'm on borrowed time, as it were. But I'm not afraid. I already know how this is going to end. So if you're reading this, one of two things is going to happen. One, my former employers will kill me and stop me from doing what I have to do. And the world you know won't change. Life will just continue as it was, and if you're living in that world, I'm sorry. I can't save every future. You'll be fine. Probably live a nice life and all that, but when the future comes, your grandchildren will never have it any better than you did. Life will stagnate until it finally ends. 2, I'll succeed. And if I do, I'm sorry. You're probably going to die because of what I've done. But I don't regret it. Not one bit. What's at stake here is worth it. The future is worth it. And I can't pretend that it isn't. Some people are going to call me a monster. That's fine. I don't care. I've seen what's coming. And it's worth the price we'll pay. It's worth it. Community college so far had been a wash for me. An associate's degree in liberal arts, and 2 Microsoft certifications later, and I still had no clear career path or end goal in mind. My part-time work at a big box hardware store was unfulfilling, and I was pretty sure I wouldn't end up using the degree or certificates I had already earned. During lunch in the student center, I saw a bold-faced advertisement for our community college's employment placement service office and decided it was worth a shot. Selling hammers and ceiling fans to pot-bellied, do-it-yourself suburbanites was played out for me. I finished my sandwich and headed to the office indicated on the flyer. When I walked in, a pleasant middle-aged woman greeted me and showed me to one of the 6 computers used to show job postings to interested students. She briefly explained to me the layout of their listing system and told me to let her know if I had any questions. I thanked her and fired up the aging desktop. The only shortcut on the desktop was a small Internet Explorer icon titled Jobs. I clicked it and waited as the outdated internet and computer struggled to bring me up to the page. Once it loaded, I scrolled through the generic listings, looking for anything that would interest me. There were listings for convenience stores, wholesale membership clubs, and of course the same big box store I was currently wasting away at. Feeling like this was a waste of time, I was about to close the browser when a strange listing caught my eye. Don't click here unless you are seeking a lucrative and long-term employment. Serious inquiries only. Certain terms may apply. Feeling certain none of the other countless job postings interested me, I decided to click on it and began to read. Hello to all of you potential recruits. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Mr. Deacon, and I'm a talent scout of sorts. Don't worry about my first name. We likely won't have more than 2 or 3 conversations at a maximum, so overfamiliarity will do us no favors. My clients task me with acquiring talented individuals for extremely specific and high-pressure career opportunities. It is my assurance to you that should we meet to discuss an employment opportunity, you will be provided a cash offer, unattainable anywhere else. Do you need medical? Not a problem. Paid time off varies by job posting, but in most instances 1 to 2 weeks a year will be considered manageable. Retirement, if of course you reach it, is unparalleled in any other public or private sector job. The contract terms are quite binding, though. You see, once you fill these positions, it is of the most importance that the position stays filled. Your work, dear applicant, is a matter of life and death in most instances. I performed these talent acquisitions for the better part of the last 50 years, and have found that the greatest success in filling these unique roles simply lies in telling the truth. My clients seek a desperate sort. Those down on their luck seem to be far more willing to take on this employment. It is difficult to convince a person with a comfortable lifestyle and a rainy day fund to accept these deadly jobs. In recent years, I have also discovered that the curious sort will occasionally wander in to my reach to fill these positions. Dear applicant, you may have heard tales of my talent acquisitions from time to time. A random tale pops up describing their gainful employment. Tales of beasts, tortured souls, foul imps. My father often told me as I grew up that you shouldn't believe every outlandish tale you hear. What he didn't tell me is that more of the outlandish tales you hear are true, but we simply cannot accept the maddening possibilities the darker corners of our world
can bring. I've gotten terribly off track. Please allow me to regain my footing here. Below, I will tell you of 2 positions available as well as the benefits and potential risks. You clicked on this listing, so I can only assume you know what you may be getting into. Position 1. Evening shift, cave watchman, and marksman. Pay $5,000 per non-sighting week, $1,000 bonus for successful extermination. Description: if you've ever fancied the tranquil life of lakeside cabin living, then we have been searching for you. Accommodations in a rustic but well-equipped cabin in the dense woodlands of the eastern Kentucky mountains are available. Your shift will begin at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and end at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from Monday to Friday. No holidays or weekends at this time. Your duties are minimal, but quite specific. At the beginning of each shift, you will be provided with 2 rifles and abundant ammunition. Please have experience with firearms and the maintenance thereof, as you will need to perform daily checks on your primary and secondary weapon each shift. You will be posted in a 50-foot high watchtower at the intersection of 3 cave entrances. Most accurately, in this situation, they are cave exits. You are never to enter the caves. You will only observe the entrances for activity. If any entity, shamblers, as we've come to call them, exits any of the 3 caves, you are to shoot them on sight. They most often have the appearance of an emaciated and hairless bear that walks with an unsteady, shuffling gait when they are fed. After a medium-sized meal, the shambler will gain greater speed and agility. Through trial and error, we were able to learn that their primary source of nutrients comes from human bone marrow. This places you in particular danger if they are not eliminated quickly and at a distance. Knowing this, you will periodically receive a shipment of fresh cadavers to lure the shambler to a clearing for a clear view when eliminating them. Hired personnel will be responsible for placing cadavers in the clearing at the start of the shift and removal and cold storage of any uneaten cadavers at the end of the shift. It should be noted that only a shot to the head will kill the shamblers. Removal of the exterminated remains is unnecessary, as the creature will burst into flames upon elimination. Fire extinguishers are provided in the watchtower for post-termination suppression. Lastly, you should never at any time attempt to simplify your job by attempting to collapse the caves and trap the shamblers. This has been attempted twice in the past. While seemingly successful at first, the original cave returned the next day without issue, with an additional opening located beside it. The process was attempted a second time, which resulted in the third opening. This has increased the emergence of shamblers and increased the workload of shambler escape termination specialists. Their emergence in recent years has become more frequent and erratic, so remain vigilant, lest your marrow become their next meal. Posting number 2. Live-in caretaker of a condemned orphanage. Pay $3,000 weekly. Free room and board is included. Description: New York City draws an exciting assortment of people from all around the world. It also seems to maintain a fierce grip on some of its very own deceased occupants. Trident Orphanage, near East Harlem, was the site of a devastating fire in 1937. 7 unfortunate children lost their lives in the blaze, yet their non-corporeal forms have remained. Your job, as caretaker of the Trident Orphanage, is to see to the needs of the children, while keeping them from contacting one another. If they become aware of the fact that they are deceased, they will either attempt to possess your body and exit the orphanage, or lure nearby pedestrians into the building to do the same. Only 5 of the original 7 children still reside in the building due to the carelessness of 2 previous caretakers. The organization that maintains a watch over this facility experimented with the release of one child via the possession of a vagrant in the 1960s. While initially seeming to be a questionable but effective method of releasing these souls, Short-term study of the possessed vagrant proved this method to be unacceptable. As the vagrant was observed over the following 2 weeks, their body began to deteriorate rapidly in a similar fashion to advanced leprosy. Corresponding with this, both the personality of the child and the possessed subject struggled for physical and mental control. After 14 days, the vagrant expired and released the poor soul back into the world, who continually moved from host to host. This child and host were eventually quarantined in a different facility, and to this day, although a new host must be acquired every 14 days, it has become impossible to confine the soul in celestial form. Escaped Subject 2 escaped in 1989. It was never tracked or recovered. As a caretaker, your duties will be to engage the other 5 orphans with various activities throughout the day in their respective rooms. Games, toys, and books are provided and should be rotated out regularly, so as not to become stale or disengaging. The children are under no circumstances to see one another. To date, this is the only way the children discover they are dead, is to see another child or their appearance. Their unfortunate final form still remains the charred flesh and bone, their final living days. Escaped Subject 1 discovered a forgotten mirror, which began their frenzy to find a new body, resulting in the vagrant possession experiment. Escaped Subject 2 was able to see another child in the hallway, which prompted the possession of the current caretaker and eventual escape. Keep the children engaged and out of the eyeline of one another. As a precaution, the Trident Orphanage now has no reflective surfaces in the facility, and the door remains locked from the outside, should you become an unwilling vessel for one of your charges. You will be relieved for 4 weeks out of the year for a vacation, and all physical needs will be met during your stay. By reading the above position, notices you have agreed to accept placement by Mr. Deacon and Associates. Those, dear applicant, are my only 2 active openings at the moment. I'm afraid that willing participants are somewhat difficult to come by, so the terms I work under have become somewhat more unscrupulous over the years. Desperation, after all, can be created. Your knowledge of my work has bound you to a contract of sorts with 2 potential paths forward. Path 1. Accept this gainful employment for myself and my clients. You need not reply here. All you need to do is write posting number 1 or posting number 2 on a sheet of paper. Place it in an envelope with a small drop of your blood on the corner and place it in your mailbox. One of my couriers will be by this evening to check for your reply. We already know where you are, so no need to share your location. In the event of a failure in one of these postings, we may collect you in the future as a more proper replacement. Path 2. Do nothing. Ignore this. Leave no envelope. I also know where you are. The unwilling always make excellent bait for the shamblers or a pristine vessel for our unfortunate child in quarantine. Either way, dear applicant, I will be seeing you. Some sooner than others. What the hell had I just read? This couldn't possibly be real. Some asshole had logged into the school system and added this as a prank. I pushed the chair back from the desk and walked over to the attendant and asked her to come look at the job posting I had just finished so she could remove it. We walked back to the desk together, but the listing was no longer on the screen. There was just a smiley face in the center with the words, "Thank you for your application," typed beneath it. She clicked back to the listing page and asked me to find it. I scrolled down to where the listing had been earlier, but nothing was there. A few more seconds of scrolling up and down the page were fruitless effort. Confused as I was, I thanked her for her help and headed back to catch the bus to my apartment. The entire ride there, I kept thinking of the job posting. I thought it was a joke initially, but now I was feeling like slightly paranoid. Could that Deacon guy really know who I was? How had I applied to the posting? I sat in my place with a blank sheet of paper and an envelope in front of me. I tried to put the pen on the page 100 times, but was trying to convince myself there was no way this was real. What if I put the thing in the mailbox and it's gone tomorrow? A worse thought occurred to me. Will something really happen if I don't? With a quick scratch, I wrote a number on the sheet and went outside to put it in my mailbox. Before I slid it into the mailbox, I pulled out my pocket knife and nicked the end of my thumb, adding a bloody thumbprint like a macabre stamp to the corner. The old mailbox lid squealed with rust as I opened it and dropped the envelope in. This morning I awoke, headed to the mailbox to see if my letter was still there, just to soothe my worries. When I peered inside, the envelope appeared to be gone. I stood on the tips of my toes to look into the bottom and found a yellowed scrap of paper crumpled in the corner. Pulling it out and smoothing the surface, I read the 11 words and curling signature. You have been selected, dear applicant. I shall collect you soon. Mr. Deacon. My heart swelled into my throat and frightened tears fell down my face. I knew now something was coming for me soon. Reading that job posting had bound me to some hellish contract, and now someone who shouldn't have known where I lived had left me this note. If you don't hear from me again, I hope at least this will keep you from making the same mistake I did. If you see anything labeled by Mr. Deacon, just don't read it. I'm sad to say the terms really do apply. Times have been lean during the recession and pandemic. I've been on unemployment for about a year and a half, with no suitable work turning up. Seems like every application I've put in has been a fruitless effort. The worker I'm assigned to at the local unemployment office used to be sympathetic with my situation, but now she seems like she's just frustrated with me. I've turned in so many rejected applications to maintain my unemployment that she's recently made some changes to the way she handles my case. It's no longer enough for me to bring proof of the applications I've submitted. From this point going forward, I have to make an appointment with the office to come in and submit 5 applications a week on a state computer in their meeting room. Embarrassing as it is, I'm getting desperate for work, but I'm also desperate to keep the unemployment check until I find some. My last office visit was a worse experience than usual. A friend of mine had recently disappeared, but we haven't heard from him for weeks. I had plenty of time on my hands, being jobless, to help search for him, but we hadn't had any success so far. I had plenty of time on my hands, being jobless, to help search for him, but we hadn't had any success so far. Staring at that dusty monitor in the employment office was so much harder with my mind on my friend. I had already filled out 4 applications and was searching for a 5th, when one with a different and less informative subject line popped up. Mr. Deacon is here again with a new job offer. Certain terms may apply. I clicked on it and began to read. Hello to all of you potential recruits. Mr. Deacon here again, and as always I'm excited to see you. Welcome back to some of those I'm already familiar with. If we haven't had the pleasure as of yet, rest assured that I have previously provided a reasonable amount of information as to who I am and what I do. For those of you with a limited amount of time or attention, I will give you a brief recapitulation. My name, dear applicant, is Mr. Deacon, and I am a talent scout of sorts. A variety of clients employ my services in the acquisition of talented men and women to perform lucrative but dangerous tasks, both long-term and short. Benefits are provided, compensation is generous, but the work will be challenging. An employment opportunity and relevant information will be provided below, so please read with care. For those familiar with my work, please allow me to update you on a few things. My benevolent clients were overwhelmed with the amount of interest in our previous 2 postings. This is most fortuitous, as the occurrence of events and locations requiring their attention seems to be increasing at a rate which we have not before seen. Some of our best and brightest investigators are working diligently at these new sites to prepare them for job placement. In the coming weeks and months, I may again reach out for your talents. As usual, I've gotten a bit off track. Please allow me to present you with a single tantalizing option today. There are many offers in the works currently, but this one is of particular importance to my operation as a whole. Certain agreements must be maintained, and my priority is to make safe those unaware of certain entities and threats that creep just behind the peaceful facade of this world. Posting number 3. On-call parcel delivery. Must be available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Pay $2,000 per completed delivery. Locations. Various postings globally. Description. If you find yourself with abundant time on your hands and a desire to travel your local vicinity, then I believe we may have just the position for you. Havencroft and Garnet Delivery Solutions have immediate openings for detailed and discreet delivery drivers. Constant availability is required with a 2-year contracted term. Your duties as a delivery driver at Havencroft and Garnet Delivery Solutions are straightforward, but must be followed to the word. Upon receiving a call from our dispatch team, you are to report to the provided address, no later than 1 hour after notification. The address will change with each new delivery, as well as the vehicle you use to make the deliveries. Once you arrive at the provided location, you will find a cargo van with an advertisement on the side of H&G Logistics. Once you arrive at the provided location, you will find a cargo van with an advertisement on the side of H&G Logistics. The door will be unlocked and keys will be in the ignition. A yellow post-it note will be adhered to the radio with the delivery address. The provided address in your cargo van will be no more than 25 miles from your current destination, and no less than 10 miles away. You are to use the onboard GPS in the van to travel to the provided address. Arrival is required within 1 hour upon taking possession of the cargo van. Do not make any personal stops while driving the H&G Logistics vehicle. Should you be pulled over by any law enforcement entity, there is a business card located above your head in the sun visor. You are not to touch this card unless a traffic stop or roadblock occurs. This card is to be provided to the officer making the stop. It should be noted that this card is not to be returned to you and will remain in the possession of the law enforcement officer. If the officer should attempt to return the card to you, begins to show signs of neurological issues, or attempts to open your vehicle door and gain entry, you are to drive away immediately. The officer will not attempt to follow you. Understand that you are never to attempt to read this card yourself. During transit to the assigned destination, you are never to inspect the cargo in the rear of your van. Every delivery will have a steel reinforced chest approximately the size of a refrigerator box turned on its side. While most parcels will remain silent during transit, you may expect a variety of scratching noises, smells of decay, screaming, and occasional pleading coming from the container. The voice from the container may also occasionally know your name, or sound similar to a friend or loved one. Regardless of any attempts at interaction from the contents of the container, you are prohibited from examination or communication with the contents held within. Earplugs are provided in the glove box for your convenience. Upon arrival at your delivery destination, you are to pull within 25 feet of any door and honk the horn 3 times. Turn off the engine, place the keys on the dashboard, and place the sleep mask located in the console cup holder over your eyes. If you place the provided earplugs in your ears, they must be removed at this time. Within 45 seconds of honking the horn, you will hear the back doors of the van open, and the cargo will be removed. After the door has been closed, you will hear 3 knocks on your driver's side window. Roll it down with the manual crank handle. A voice will ask why you are there. You must repeat the following words in exactly this order. We have provided what has been agreed upon. May our gift provide your continued mercy. Do not remove your blindfold. Do not attempt to move. While you may be tempted to depart at this point, you must remain in place. You will hear the container be opened, and the unmistakable sounds of a struggle. Even if the cargo has previously been quiet, it will at this point undoubtedly begin to scream. Breaking bones, wet tearing of flesh, and other telltale signs of feeding will follow the cargo if it's found to be acceptable. The feeding process will last for approximately 5 minutes. At the end of this, you will hear the back doors of the cargo van open, and the container will be placed back in and the doors resecured. If you have followed all of these steps correctly, you should hear 3 additional knocks on your window. At this time, you are to count aloud and to 100 and take off your blindfold. Start the van, depart the location, and do not visually investigate the areas you leave. Return the van to your pickup destination and retrieve the folded handkerchiefs and matches located in the passenger seat. Exit the van and place the handkerchief in the gas tank opening and ignite the handkerchief with the provided matches. Move quickly out of the vicinity of the vehicle. Regardless of the distance, you are required to travel by foot back to your home. Upon arrival, you will find an envelope with payment located inside your front door. Failure, in part or whole, during this process will result in near immediate death. By reading the above position notice, you have agreed to accept placement by Mr. Deacon and Associates. So there you have it, dear applicant. This posting is near and dear to my heart, as I have overseen this position from the beginning of my career. Your dedication to the service will continue to maintain a delicate balance, kept in place since time immemorial. As to how you shall show interest, dear applicant, please do the following. Before you go to bed this evening, take a drop of your blood and spread it evenly on your thumb. Press your thumb to the center of a mirror in your home and leave the bloody print there. The courier is working on more expedient avenues of travel, so this should improve the process just a touch. If the print is there in the morning, then your services will not be required. Should your print be gone, then my associates will soon be in touch. If we do not select you for this position, I ask that you do not become despondent. Rest assured, I will return with other exciting opportunities in the future. As with last time, dear applicant, I will be seeing you, some sooner than others. Thank you, Mr. R. Deacon and Associates. My stomach was in a knot. Everything in that position was so unsettling I couldn't believe it was real. I read a few portions of it again in disbelief, but the outlandishness of the words on the screen just intensified in my mind. Grabbing the mouse, I moved the cursor down to the back button and clicked it, and a new screen came up with a smiley face and the words, "Thank you for your application," beneath it. Feeling unsettled, I got up from the desk and headed for the door. My caseworker asked me if I had finished my applications for the week, but I just ignored her and headed out the front door and started walking home. I know they were just words on the screen. Something deep in the pit of my stomach felt like something was wrong. It felt like something was watching me. But every time I looked over my shoulder, there was no one there. I sat on the edge of my bathtub feeling sick to my stomach. Glanced up at the bathroom mirror now and again, and the thought played in the back of my mind that maybe I should put that bloody thumbprint there. If this was all a joke, I had nothing to lose. If it wasn't, I may have already agreed to something much worse. Running a razor over my thumb, the blood blossomed into a pool, and I planted the print onto the mirror and got into bed. This morning, when I went to the bathroom and turned on the light, I let out a shrill cry when I looked at the mirror. My thumbprint was gone, but now there was a long and winding cursive written in scarlet red in the center. Talk to you soon, dear applicant. Mr. Deacon. I could feel my heart hammering against the wall of my chest. Startling me for a second time, my phone began to ring in my pocket. And fishing it out, I looked at the caller ID to see that H&G Delivery Solutions blinks on the screen.
was not meant to carve their way into the frozen tundras of the Antarctic. I know that now, and I leave behind this story to be a warning to others of the cold hell that awaits them in that forsaken place. It will be my final warning to mankind. I hate travel. Before coming to work for Aspheria Fuel, I hardly ever left my home state, and definitely not the country. Imagine my surprise when I got the chance to do both, and to go to the South Pole as well. I'm a geophysicist, a researcher by trade, and often my work is regulated to data and spreadsheets. I could not imagine why our CEO would want my expertise here in this remote corner of the world. Aspheria is a leader in alternative resources for propulsion. No fossil fuels by 2050. That has been the goal the president set before us for some time. Using my knowledge of our natural world, I've worked with a great team for quite some time now, to make sure that's a promise we keep. It's true, this is a bold and ambitious plan, but it's rare you find dreamers who actually make good on their word. President Duran was not a politician, and not motivated by power. He was concerned for our planet. The South Pole expedition, known as the Unicorn Project, was meant to search for a new source of energy in the farthest, most unexplored regions of our planet, the Antarctic. Most of the world felt that this was a huge waste of money, but Duran was not deterred by that. He was convinced something magical like a real unicorn would be discovered in the wild, and that since so much of the South Pole was unknown to us, there was a safe bet we would find something there. The fact that I was now about to land down and meet with him and the other members of the project told me that the bet had likely paid off. They had found an energy source of some kind. Now it would be up to me to figure out the best way to excavate it. I did my best to ignore the overwhelming nausea of being in high elevation as we reached the last leg of the journey, which was done by helicopter. As explained by the representative that found me at the landing spot near the edge of the continent, Duran was very secretive about this. You must understand that despite the fact so many people are scoffing at the notion of alternative fuel, the reality is they are concerned and fearful of success. Oil companies make trillions of dollars a year. Should we eventually be able to uncover something that would threaten them, it would be all at war, he explained. I didn't really want to get into the social and economic impact of whatever this discovery was until I saw it for myself, so I kept quiet. Instead, I reviewed notes on who would be there, besides Duran himself. Malcolm Spalver was listed as the head researcher. I knew him only by reputation. He had previously worked with Elon Musk to assist the development of the Tesla manufacturing lines. But when the billionaire had decided to focus on buying Twitter and shooting rockets to Mars, Malcolm jumped ship and came to work for Aspheria. Not that anyone was complaining. It was clear he had a lot invested in technologies that could make sure our planet was preserved for the future. Next was a name that caught me by surprise. Faye Rarico, a seismologist and astronomer, two fields that I wasn't entirely sure benefited the project too greatly, but the work they did indicated that she was a level-headed scientist in those fields, so I decided to wait and see what they could contribute. Next was Keldon Fell, head of security, a former Afghan vet, having served 2 tours during Operation Enduring Freedom. It was obvious him and his lackeys were solely here for protective purposes. The team was rounded out by a physician. Avery LaFren and her medical staff worked diligently to make sure everyone here in this remote station stayed healthy and happy. It was a known fact that depression easily settles in for anyone that comes to this isolated corner of the globe, and it wasn't hard to see why. There was nothing besides the base of operation for miles, just snowy mountains and white, icy terrain. Not even a single penguin trudged across the glacier, as our helicopter began to drop and I caught sight of Mr. Himes, Duran's personal assistant. Claude Himes didn't have a bio like the others, but that was because he worked in a supervisory role. His job was making sure the others did theirs efficiently, and he would definitely be monitoring me as well, a new kink in the equation. The question still loomed over me as the helicopter settled down. Why the sudden change of plans to include me? What had they uncovered here? And why did it seem like Himes had a look of worry on his face? Dr. Vallis, I take it you weren't told to pack light. Himes asked over the roar of the helicopter blades, as he saw the luggage I had brought. It was only 4 small suitcases, but I got the feeling he wasn't happy I'd brought any kind of outside equipment to his wintry sanctuary. I have all my data and backups on these laptops, I said, grabbing the nearest suitcase. If the others have to be left behind, I insist I bring this at the very least. Well, let's see to it that its firewall security is updated to prevent shareware and other unsanctioned activities. But very well, let's get inside. President Duran has been anxiously anticipating your arrival. I grabbed my hat as well and covered it over my head as we hurried away from the landing pad. Once the helicopter was lifting and I didn't feel the need to scream, I felt safe to ask my first burning question. Forgive me if this is being forward, but given the cryptic nature of Professor Spalver's initial email, and the urgency you put forth to get me out here so quickly, I can't help but feel I'm still being kept in the dark here. What exactly am I here to do? I asked. Claude gave an apologetic smile as we reached the first elevator to lead to the underground base. I think, if I'm being honest, you are here to make sure the rest of us do not go insane. 30 minutes later, I was waiting in a conference room with warm tea in my hand, as Duran and the others entered. It felt like I was in high school again, and we had all gathered for some strange reason at the auditorium to watch a film, especially because I saw Roriko tweaking a projector. President Duran, it's an honor, sir, I said, standing up as he entered the room. The southern mustache-twirling cowboy grabbed my hand and gave me a hug. Call me Jim. Ain't no need for formality down here, son. This here is as wild and west as it gets, he chuckled. I have to admit I was off-put by him, but settled as the others entered the room and made their introductions. I couldn't help but to notice, other than the president, the team was subdued and quiet. Almost frightened, I realized, as Claude took center stage and waited for Faye to activate the movie projector. Per your contract, what you see and hear is the sole property of Aspheria, and any leaks will result in your permanent termination, Claude remarked. Enough of the hogwash, show him the damn robot, Jim said irritably. My ears perked up. I'm sorry, did you just say robot? The lights dimmed and the screen in front of me flickered to reveal a bird's eye view of the glacier that we were sitting on. It was a geological survey of the area, I realized, and Faye began to talk. At approximately 0500 hours standard time, our drill team hit what was initially assumed to be a large sedimentary fault line near the eastern bank of the glacier, located roughly around here. She paused and circled the area, and then zoomed in. I noticed it was glowing a soft pink. However, once the debris was cleared away and we made a bit of headway, this is what we actually discovered instead. She paused and clicked for the next slide, and I felt my heart skip a beat. It was a grainy image, but it spoke volumes. I was staring at a giant metallic head, perhaps as large as a redwood tree, and wider than a football field. It was encased beneath the ice, but some of the initial features were clear. 4 massive, long vertical slits for eyes, a curved top of the head with V-shaped antennae on either side, and a narrowed, pointed chin at the bottom. There appeared to be long tendrils of cords on either side of the head, like some sort of motion apparatus, and I could see that beneath that there were small glimpses of the abdomen and torso, indicating it was quite massive. It's a freaking Gundam robot. I couldn't help but to laugh nervously. I wanted to tell myself this was a weird joke, but no one else was cracking up. Even Jim got dead silent. Malcolm approached the central podium and changed the slide to the next image, which showed spikes of energy within the giant frozen mech. As you can see, this is the energy source we were actually trying to get at for the past 3 months. Our surveys have led us to one of the most monumental discoveries in human history. The first confirmed evidence of advanced technology from outer space. Hold your horses now, we don't know it's alien. That's why we brought Valis to work his magic, Duran pointed out. I felt a sick twist in my stomach. I wasn't prepared for this. You're saying you want me to determine if whatever it's outputting as a means of power can be safely used here on Earth? I guessed. In short, yes. It's obvious by scans that the thing's been frozen in the ice since before the dinosaurs. So how it has managed to somehow store its energy for this long in reserve is something we desperately need to understand. But we also need to make sure that whatever that method is can also be viable for Aspheria, Malcolm answered. So, what do you say, Doc? Can you get the robo to dance for us? Jim said with a chuckle. My mouth was dry, but my heart was pounding. I think I need to see this damn thing for myself. It was even more impressive sitting there beneath my feet. The ice had been chopped away now, with the gear to reveal that we could enter, but before I dared to go in, I asked if anyone else had explored the interior. Security Chief Keldon showed me photographs that a drone had taken of the headpiece, and the contraptions that connected it to the shoulders. It looked very similar to designs of a cockpit that we might use, and for some reason this knowledge unsettled me. One reason we need your expertise is because there have been several incidents with our workers getting ill from being within the robot for too long, the doctor explained. I'm sure you might be surprised to learn we used to have double the staff here. They're all sick? I asked in surprise. And unfortunately, it's beyond my capability or the equipment we have on site to properly diagnose them, Avery said with a curt nod. I made the call that anyone going inside the mech should wear protective gear, and Malcolm pointed out one issue they had was they didn't have a lot of that type of stuff. Doesn't Duran sign the blank checks around here? Get him to order some. No one should be putting themselves at risk going in that thing, I pointed out. They gave each other an uncomfortable look, and I got the feeling that despite how friendly the president seemed, he was also a demanding boss. They had been waiting to get this thing dug, and I knew that there probably was a schedule to keep up with, meaning Duran might have decided to take risks and move faster at the risk of his staff. Fine, we take turns then. I should go in alongside Miss Rarico. We can do a more thorough survey of the mech and take samples tonight, I ordered. About an hour later, Faye and I had suited up, and we were going down into the dark, metallic mech. The hum of the lab was soon drowned out by the silence of what had once been used for God knows what, and I couldn't help but to feel a sense of unease as we started towards where I guessed the main control panel was. I noticed you haven't been trying to make any theories about where this hunk of junk came from, Faye commented once we were far enough away from the others. My helmet lamp clicked on and illuminated the path ahead as we walked toward the neck ladder, and I commented, Wouldn't be very wise to speculate. We can accomplish more by gathering evidence. You're a very straightforward and logical scientist, Dr. Vallis. Please, just call me Logan. And I'm sure that's one reason Duran called me. For example, if this thing were a threat to us or humanity, we need to figure that out fast before we start accidentally activating it. We paused as we reached the top of the helmet, and I looked around the room. Nothing seemed to stir, just an empty, barren room once filled with computer and wire. I reached over to touch one of the consoles, and found it a bit strange there didn't seem to be any sort of dust on the surface. Are you sure this thing's still active? Maybe all we're detecting is the stored fuels from millennia gone by, Rarico commented. Before I answered, I turned toward the back of the massive mech helmet and froze in place, my headlamp shining directly on what looked to be a doorway that led into an observation deck. Perhaps what surprised me the most was that it looked like it might be active. I think this answers your question, I said softly as we stepped into it, and I saw holographic imagery of the solar system and beyond. Astounding. This has never happened before, she commented. I couldn't help but wonder how it had mysteriously activated as I walked about the starry planetarium, and wondered how these aliens had so meticulously mapped out our quadrant all those ages ago. Faye reached out for one of the glowing spheres that seemed to operate the display, and touched it. Suddenly she screamed out in pain and fell to the ground, grabbing her head and spasming. The stars in the display swirled about a bit faster and faster, a chronological hologram of our heavens from the past, racing by as I went to her side to help her. The spasms in her body seemed to get worse as the display sped up, and then, at last, it stopped to show an icy blue world hovering near an asteroid belt. I was temporarily distracted by the display, wondering if this might be a vision of Earth from the Ice Age. But I needed to focus on Faye instead and radioed for help. Medics found us, and we returned to Duran's base to try and plan our next move as she was monitored. I reported back everything that happened to Claude, who looked a bit concerned, but also made it clear we couldn't stop now. When that hologram was occurring, the energy levels went through the roof, We've got to complete the survey and see how we can excavate the ice, or you're going to need to convince the world of something that can't be verified. And let's not forget the potential threat here. Or we simply walk away from this before anyone else gets hurt, Keldon said. He seemed reluctant to want to return to the mech, and that basically meant no security. Jim wasn't going to be deterred, though, and ordered that we begin taking samples that same hour. I took my equipment, too tired to argue, and trudged back to the robot. It was time to find out exactly what the origin of this metallic monstrosity was, and since everyone else was too busy to join me, that also meant I had to go alone into the depths. Keldon advised against it, and originally Claude had said with so many people getting sick, going deeper wasn't allowed. But I was positive the source of energy we needed was near the core of the mech body. Duran wanted results, and I honestly wanted to get this all done and go home. I started down the grimy interior, the noises of my own footsteps and my heartbeat all that I could hear. It was dark, and it felt colder and colder as I went down to the core. About 10 minutes later, something seemed to stir in the robot. The entire ladderway lit up, and I saw the wiring and complex machinery twisting about me, and seemed to come to life like veins to a heart. Below, I heard whining noises and strange clacking sounds. I was close to the heart of this robotic beast. I realized as I found an antechamber and took out my equipment. I took different parts of the room and sampled them, trying my best not to disturb them. I did feel, though, sometimes it was like I was stabbing a wound in a living creature. The mech did not appreciate my intrusion, and each time let out a yelp. I was hurting it for a while, but this is why I came. I was a predator, and I needed to hunt and discover and feed whatever was at my disposal. Suddenly, I hit something, and I felt a numbness in my hand, like a needle had been driven through my palms forcefully. I tried again, and the shooting pain became even worse. Then I noticed it was happening at the exact moment that I struck the mech. Was the robot reacting to what I did? I struck again, and a plume of strange green gas spewed out from the ground, causing me to fumble backwards and gasp for breath for a moment. As I recovered my senses, I suddenly noticed that the room's electronics had come to life. Then I saw an alien silhouette in the doorway, and backed away from fear. Something about their gait told me this new creature was a predator, or perhaps it had become defensive due to my attempt at attacking the mech. "Valis, are you down there?" I heard Malcolm calling to me. I tried to shout for him to stay away, but it was too late. The shadowy monster rushed towards the steps and attacked him, blood spilling on the robot's metallic floor as Spalver gasped for breath and collapsed to the ground. Then I saw the blood on my own hands, and I suddenly realized I had also hit Malcolm, trying to prevent him from touching the robot. I raised my hand up to look at it and then saw the reflection of the alien do the same. "What did you do to me?" I whispered. I heard some strange, cryptic noise in the back of my head, and when I realized it was the robot speaking to me, I knew exactly what had occurred. I hurried back up the ladder, shouting to my colleagues above. The shadow was right behind me, and as I moved, I suddenly realized that the massive mech was also beginning to rumble and activate. The ice around us began to shake as I reached the control module. Then I made it out to the base, where I saw Claude and President Duran hurrying to find out what the ruckus was all about. "Stay back! It's coming to life!" I said, raising my hands up. That was the last thing I remembered, as the ice suddenly cracked and the robot moved its gigantic arms towards the base. Darkness and shattering noise filled my head as I fell into the void, the ice and cold and rocks crumbling around me as I hit something wet beneath. I don't really know how long I laid there. When I did wake up, I saw that I was in a makeshift infirmary. Military personnel had been called in for some kind of rescue. As I fluttered my eyes open, I saw that Claude, Dr. Avery, and Keldon were also being treated. Claude was the only one able to stand. "What happened?" I asked. "The mech. It destroyed our base of operations. My God, Valis, what did you do down there?" he whispered. "It infected me. That is no mere robot. It's a living thing. I can feel it still inside my head. It wants me to help it," I said, suddenly realizing I understood what the strange shadows were telling me. "It's inside of you?" he asked in surprise, checking my charts and muttering. "This explains some of your spiked levels. Your entire biology has begun to transform," Claude said. I don't recall much else because I blacked out again, but when I was able to gain consciousness, I realized we were back in the Antarctic, in an observatory mountain where we could see the ruins of Aspheria's first base. I tried to move my wrists and then noticed I was strapped down. "Logan, you're awake," I heard a familiar voice say as they walked in. Dr. Avery only had one leg now, likely lost the other one in the initial accident, and she looked at me the way a circus trainer would a wild animal. I was a threat, or possibly a puppet. "President Duran is dead, and we lost over 20 of our staff in that collapse. Ruriko, Malcolm, and then Keldon also passed during post-op. All at your hand," Avery said as she grabbed a tablet and pressed a few keys on it. I felt my arm being raised up against my will. At the same time, something stirred in the pit thousands of miles below. My other half was being manipulated. I saw the robot rise to the surface, the broken shell of a once proud race, now reduced to slavery. "We can't do this. That thing could destroy mankind." "Aspheria has a secondary division with the military. That thing out there will make sure the company stays afloat for the next 50 years. Weapons, security, you name it. We have become the power holders in the industry now," Claude announced as he came to my side and clasped my shoulder. "And it's all thanks to your curiosity. You should be glad you're such an integral part of the future." They both left me alone in the dark, and I stared down at the destruction the robot had already caused. This was not the way things were supposed to go. I couldn't let the future be written with more blood. During the next few hours, I struggled to get my left hand free. Somewhere during the accident, I had broken a few bones, and it made me more limber. Once I was free, I tried to manipulate the robot myself with my mind. Slowly, the arm raised and functioned by my telepathic link. My arm was burning, and I realized that there were weapon cannons within the metallic frame of the robot. I pointed the arm toward us, toward this base. Then, I said a prayer. The preceding records are part of the Aspheria Collective that are now classified by Janus. The data was retrieved from Object Alpha, near to the ruins of the base. It is believed the subject fired upon the base and killed everyone inside. The link between was severed and the robot became dormant again. Continued analysis is being conducted by other operatives to determine if a future operation may be conducted to resurrect the mech. I work for a company that used to test doomsday inventions on a parallel version of Earth. The idea was that we would never face the apocalyptic aftermath of a failed experiment. They would. But when that world ended, something came back with us. "Like each of you, I joined this agency for a reason: to advance our species," Director Stefan Blom announced at the monthly assembly. "Mankind must experiment to avoid stagnating, but we are rarely permitted to do so. We are constricted by bumbling bureaucrats who care only about preservation, conserving the status quo. They fear change, fear what it might mean for them. They do not understand that we will die if we do not take risks, which is why we owe our lives to Dr. Gerard Weston. Our esteemed physicist has found a way to pursue experimental projects without upsetting politicians and militaries. His latest achievement, the Weston Tunnel, has created a doorway to another universe, one with a parallel version of our world, Earth 2. There, we will conduct our supposedly dangerous work without putting Earth 1 at risk. And our leaders will see, presidents, prime ministers, commanders, when we achieve results, they won't care about how we obtained them. They've never cared about their neighbors before, have they? Dozen Minus is a callous corporation in every universe, one linked to the British and American governments. Governments you might already despise in the public sphere. So you wouldn't want to know the dreadful things they do behind closed doors. Dozen Minus rarely conducts ethical experiments. Your leaders only care about money, and we only care about progress. Director Blom has only ever cared about progress, I should say. He ensures that politicians get their payday, and they mostly let him do as he pleases. Governments only expressed concern when we began to develop technology that threatened humanity's very existence. Of course, as Blom explained in his speech, world leaders think nothing of their neighbors. And Earth 2 was nothing more than a cluster of nations across the pond. The pond being that multiversal tunnel between one reality and another. Earth 2 became Director Blom's playground, a gargantuan laboratory for performing Dozen Minus's experiments without repercussions. And when inventions were tested successfully, they were greenlit for use in our world. How do I fit into all this? Well, my name is Adriano Rossi, and I was a computer programmer who worked on the Nervarum project. We were creating the world's first superintelligence, a conscious, self-teaching AI called Nerve. Science fiction made reality. Now, I know that AI has been snowballing over the last couple of years, but Dozen Minus has been ahead of the curve for decades. The Nervarum project was actually near completion in the late 80s. This organization has always possessed technology beyond anything in the public realm. But Nerve was obstructed, was prevented from being born. The risk of humanity's extinction was, and still is, too high. Roadblocks prevented programmers from ever taking that final step, from creating a self-sustaining, inorganic intelligence capable of growing itself. A digital mind. And that was why Dr. Gerard Weston changed everything. When he developed that tunnel to a parallel version of Earth in 2015, Director Stefan Blom saw an opportunity to finally test numerous deadly devices. Inventions with the potential to end the world. After all, politicians were no longer concerned when somebody else's world was in danger. We began by investigating the Dozen Minus of Earth 2, seeing whether that parallel agency had also developed a tunnel, one that would risk Earth 1. But there was no Dr. Gerard Weston in that alternate world, thankfully. Earth 2 was vastly different, politically, culturally, historically. Dozen Minus existed, but not in the same manner. After that, we threw all we had at the parallel world. Deadly experiment after deadly experiment. And when Earth 2 survived one project, we moved straight on to the next. In early 2024, the Nervarum project reached the top of the list. It was approved for testing. Helen Harding and I stepped through Weston's tunnel into that parallel world, and we prepared to become gods. In the banal setting of a hotel room, we set up a potentially cataclysmic device. A slim, rectangular gadget that held Nerve on its hardware. That digital brain had existed in some form for nearly 30 years, being tweaked and improved by each new influx of geniuses. A collection of binary commands waiting for some courageous, or foolish, Dr. Frankenstein to yank the lever. "You need to let it go," Helen said. She'd read the slight frown on my face, the slight sign of humanity. Only I seemed to see Earth 2 as a real place. A planet barely different from ours. One teeming with life. Human beings in a drastically different world, but human beings nonetheless. "We aren't the first to come here and take a risk, Adriano," she pointed out. "But this experiment's the worst. And you know it," I said. "Nerve won't have any use for humanity once he exceeds our intelligence." "Not our intelligence," Helen reminded me. "Theirs. This is their world, Adriano. You keep forgetting that." "Even so, I still don't think we were ready," I said. She sighed. "Director Blom was very clear that..." "Yes, well, the director isn't a programmer, is he?" I asked. "Nerve will have the ability to become exponentially powerful. He'll see things that we, with our limited brains, physically can't see. Who's to say that he will stay within Earth 2? This laboratory, as Blom calls it? Nerve might find its way back to our world, Might slip through our tunnel. Helen frowned. Adriano, why did you even get involved with this project? I shook my head. You misunderstand. I'm not trying to act holier than thou. I was drawn to this for the same reasons as you. Then what's up? She asked. I told you, we need more time, I said. This has been ready for decades, Helen answered. All we've really done is tweaked and improved it. Added as many safety features as possible. I know, I replied. This is my admission of guilt, then. Adriano, my friend started. I looked up from the device on the hotel bed. What? Are we going to do this? She asked. Or do you want to explain to Mr. Blom that you've had a crisis of morality and changed your mind? I didn't, and I hadn't. With the tap of my thumb, I booted Nerve. And you may think that the horror of my tale involves this superintelligence running amok, annihilating the world. Well, it certainly did not take long for our artificial intelligence to study the internet, then teach itself things that mankind may not even be capable of understanding. But Nerve did not go rogue, did not scorch the earth. He improved it. The artificial intelligence multiplied at a rapid rate, not in the sense of procreating, but uploading itself to physical devices across the world. It revealed its plan to world leaders, offering to improve the global infrastructure, and quickly became something of a global celebrity, all within a single month. Helen and I were instructed by Dr. Blom to remain on Earth too, and we watched the planet flourish. Watched the intelligence put forth plans for tackling climate change, poverty, global debt, all known wars, and even resource shortages. Powerful people on Earth 1 wanted Nerve to be implemented back home, wanted our reality to enjoy the same economic, cultural, and scientific development as Earth 2. However, after 2 months of staggering growth, there came an unexpected knock on the door of our hotel room. Helen sighed. Will that receptionist ever just... It wasn't the receptionist, and the visitor did not allow me the dignity of opening the door. It burst inward with a single thud, the forceful pummel of a thick boot. Then charged several dark uniformed men, and the last thing I heard, before my environment slipped into a black ooze of unconsciousness, was Helen's piercing shriek. You may be shocked to learn that the above segment was only the preamble to the true horror, the story I am about to tell. Waking in a drab cell with 2 single beds and my screaming colleague, it did not take me long to piece together the situation. I'm not calling myself a genius. I simply felt familiar with the layout of the prison. The gray decor of the small room in which Helen was pounding on a glass viewing pane and begging for release. The yellow badge emblazoned across the guard's top pocket. A cold man who watched us with static eyes. My fellow inmate had, of course, also pieced things together. Adriano, you're awake. Help me. You programmed these panels back home, didn't you? Helen asked, desperately fiddling with the screen by the locked door. Do you know how to unlock it? I rubbed my sore brow and climbed off the bed. I'll try, but this isn't our dozen minus, Helen. Things are different here. I wouldn't do that if I were you, a voice interrupted. It did not come from the guard who observed us from the hallway. It came from some concealed speaker in a ceiling panel. I recognized the dulcet tone of the speaker. It was undoubtedly Director Stefan Blom, his parallel self. Please, just let us go, I called. Not until I know why you're here, Blom continued. Not until you tell me why I'm seeing double. Then 2 figures joined the watching guard in the hallway. I had expected their arrival from the moment I identified my surroundings. It was Helen and me, our alternate versions. A slightly scruffier Adriano with long facial hair and a few gray strands on top, and a slightly larger Helen with bags under the eyes and more pronounced crow's feet. There's no more horrifying way to come to terms with the duality of man than meeting oneself. I wondered whether the haggard experiments on those parallel faces had anything to do with the previous experiments that Dozen Minus had conducted on Earth 2. reckless tests that, while not world-ending, would have ruined life for the inhabitants of that alternate planet. After all, from the moment of arriving, I'd certainly noticed that the parallel world felt a little grittier and grimier than Earth 1. At least Nerve has finally improved this world, I thought. We finally made things better. That wouldn't last, of course. "Who are you?" asked the parallel Adriano in a microphone outside the room. Calling him Adriano is still strange. He looked like me, but he wasn't me. He was the possibility of another life in another world. At least, that was what I told myself to make it all feel less real. To make myself feel less culpable for the innocent lives that we had put in jeopardy by unleashing the artificial intelligence upon Earth 2. "Don't tell them anything," my Helen whispered to me. "We know that you're us," her other self said aggressively. "We have eyes. We just want to know how you came to be here," my parallel self added. "How did you enter our world? You've already shared one piece of technology with us. Why won't you share more? Let both of our worlds prosper. We should be sharing things from both sides." "They don't want to share," came Stefan Blom's voice from the speaker. "Nerve was not a gift to our world. It was a shot in the dark that, fortunately for us, did not misfire. And it wasn't the first time that your world waged war on ours, was it, Mr. Rossi?" I paused for a moment, struggling to process the fact that there were two versions of Adriano Rossi. Two versions of me. My mind whirred from the impossibility of the situation, and the head trauma inflicted by the hotel intruders. "Mr. Rossi," Blom pressed, "tell your other self the truth." "Either kill us or let us go," Helen screamed. "We don't work for you." "That isn't true," the director replied, a hint of giddiness in his voice. "And I would very much like to meet this other me. Though I'm certain, if he shares even a droplet of my will, that meeting would not end well for one of us." "We should work together," the parallel Helen pleaded. "There are clearly many differences between our worlds. We may have things to teach you too. We've been here for years. We know all there is to know about your world," I said bluntly, eyeing the parallel version of myself. I resented him for some reason. A reason just out of grasp. It wasn't the disheveled beard, not his weathered skin. It was something in that other Adriano's eyes. An emotion that was easy to discern. After all, he wore an expression that I was capable of wearing on my own face. The look of judgment. "Looks like you've got something you want to get off your chest," I said. "We've been your guinea pigs, haven't we?" my alternate self asked. I smiled. "It has nothing to do with you. This is about progression. It's always about progression. I'm sure it's the same with your man upstairs. I'd wager that Blom has the same cold heart in every reality." "Careful," the director warned. "We trial unstable things far from our world," I explained. "Somewhere that doesn't risk our world." "No, only ours," the parallel Helen whispered. "And I don't blame you," Director Blom said. "There's no need to keep secrets, Mr. Rossi. I don't seek revenge. I'm not looking to ruin your world. Quite frankly, I'm not that sensitive. I simply want a laboratory of my own. You understand that, don't you? Show me how to create a portal of my own. How to find a parallel reality to conduct our own experimental projects." "No," my alternate self interjected. "I want these invaders out of our world. And I don't want them to ever return." "And they need to help us kill Nerve," the parallel Helen said. "Kill him before he mutates into something else. In the space of 2 months, Nerve has set our world on the path of becoming a utopia," Director Blom said. "Our multiversal guests may not have intended for Nerve to be a gift, but happy accidents happen, Miss Harding." I could see my parallel self clenching his fists, halting himself from expressing his true thoughts to the unfeeling employer, whose disembodied voice filled that prison. Director Blom would have happily sacrificed every human on his own planet in the name of greatness. Never mind a parallel one. "Please, just let us go," Helen whimpered. Our alternate selves wore soft expressions. They were eyeing us, their imprisoned versions, with great sorrow. Despite the untold differences between our two realities, they still inevitably saw themselves in our faces. "We should release them," the other Helen said. "They're not going to tell us anything." "They're quiet today," Director Blom admitted. "But they might talk in a week." I knew that was no figurative turn of speech. Helen and I were promptly plunged into darkness, and we lived that way for days. Barely existed in a lightless prison cell, with nothing to do but scream into the nothingness of our cells, lose our minds to existential dread. And the only thing to break up the monotony of each black day was a daily meal. However, the terror of that nightmarish cell paled in comparison to what followed. The sound of overheard rumbling woke Helen and me. The roar of more than something dreadful happening in the building. It was a tremor that seized the earth itself. Helen and I may have tried to look at one another for comfort. It was impossible to say in that darkened existence. And neither of us said a word to one another. We were either stunned into silence by fearful anticipation, or unable to speak as the result of that inhumane isolation. "Adriano Rossi," came the jittery voice of Director Blom over the speaker. "Helen Harding." I only knew that the man hadn't abandoned us for a week, as he initially promised, because I'd counted 4 meals. But believe me when I say that 4, or 4.5 days in unlit solitude will drive a person to insanity. Gates are open to caverns of the mind that are better left closed. Better kept from the conscious brain. "Stop toying with us," I whispered. "Just end this." "What are they?" he cried. I frowned and paused for a moment. I didn't understand. And Helen wasn't saying a word, so I was more concerned that she might no longer be alive at all. I listened attentively until I was certain I'd heard her breathe in the darkness. "They say nerve won't stop," Blom continued quietly, voice half drowned by the quakes from above. "They say it will destroy this world. Every other world. It'll devour the universe itself. That's why they came here." "Who came here?" I asked, gripping the edge of my bed frame for support. They're gonna kill it, just like they killed their own unholy creation of organic matter. Killed it just before it managed to assimilate the universe itself," Blom said. "Take it back, Mr. Rossi. Kill it, please, before they destroy everything." I was bewildered. I hadn't thought that the director could fear anything. "They're going to exterminate us, Mr. Rossi," he yelled. "Make sure we won't be around to create it again." I was on the verge of asking half a dozen questions when there came both a crash and a sliver of light from the corridor. The first light in 100 hours. Helen released a deranged moan of joy, sadness, and fear. All 3 in one. Then a torch beam bounced along the hallway, and muffled footsteps followed. 2 figures rushed past our window pane. Then one swiped a card to unlock the door. "Let's go," my parallel self, torch in hand, barked. Helen and I did not need to be persuaded, though our bodies were weakened by what we'd endured. The 2 of us waddled slowly towards the doorway, blinded by the relentless glare from the torch. We struggled to orient ourselves for a good minute, but our parallel selves didn't wait for us to realign ourselves. They had already seized our upper arms and shepherded us along the hallway, dragging us towards freedom. I recognized the corridors of the building's east wing. It did not seem to noticeably differ from Dozen Minus's headquarters back on Earth. At least, not until we'd reached the well-lit ground floor lobby. The building had a glazed front wall which stretched from one side to the other, and from the tiles of the towering ceiling. Through the enormity of those many connected windows, which formed the entire front face of the 4-story building, I saw a parallel Birmingham. But that cityscape differed greatly from the one back home. The sky was painted with prickly, plummeting balls of dark blue, an invasion of color raining upon the earth. And through the thickness of that alien rain, I saw the outline of the city. saw two skyscrapers leaning against one another like pillars in a house of cards. Elsewhere, buildings both tall and small either lay in ruins or released thick plumes of smoke into the sky. The city, quaking endlessly, was on fire. "What is happening?" Helen asked quietly, eyes wide and lost. "They're here," my parallel self said as we navigated the lobby of the screaming, fleeing employees. "It won't be long until everything is gone. Every place they've hit has vanished within an hour." "I'm not coming with you," the parallel Helen said. "I have to find them." "Liam and May?" my Helen feebly asked, naming her own children. Her alternate self nodded. "Go," Helen said. "No, just wait," my other self begged before turning to me. "You're going to open that tunnel and take us with you." I scoffed. "Don't even—" "We saved your lives," he growled. "They would have killed you. And they still might if we don't leave before this world dies." "Dies?" Helen croaked. "They came in the night," her alternate self whispered as she started to break away from the group. "I have to go, Adriano." "Helen, please," my parallel self pleaded. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I hope you make it." Then Helen's alternate self merged with the scattering dozen-minus workers and rushed through the front doors. "Fuck," he yelled, looking at me with enraged eyes. "You did this. You brought them to—" "We have to do it now," Helen told me, interrupting my other self's breakdown. "Not until we get rid of him," I replied, nodding at my parallel form. Then came a blinding light and a cataclysmic boom from a mile away. A small ball of white, produced by some weapon from another planet, engulfed the city center. "I'm not dying here," the parallel version of myself snarled. "Just open the fucking tunnel, Adriano." "No," I said. "Just do it," Helen whimpered as the three of us watched apocalyptic shapes emerging from the aftermath of that white explosion. "Are you really going to let us die here just to stop him from coming back with us?" "You'll have to kill me," the other me growled, shifting anxiously on his feet and eyeing the stairs in the distance. "Don't tempt me," I said. "You're waiting for someone, aren't you?" Helen suddenly asked him. "Who is it?" Then my other self raised an eyebrow and nodded at me, waited for the two of us to come to some seemingly obvious conclusion. Then he nodded his head in understanding. "You never met her, did you?" he asked. "Molly." "The technician from the third floor?" I replied. His eyes widened, observing me with complete revulsion. "She's more than that. You really aren't me, are you?" he whispered. "Adriano!" screamed a voice from behind us. A frazzled woman sprinted across the lobby alongside the final fleeing employees. Molly was only an acquaintance to me, but it was clear from the embrace that she shared with the parallel Adriano that things were very different on Earth too. "What took you so long?" the other me asked her, nearly hysterical. "He wouldn't let us leave until we locked down the BRX prototype," she wailed, eyeing Helen and me with fearful eyes. "What are you doing with them?" "Convincing them to do it," he explained. Molly clearly understood what that meant. "Adriano." "I'm serious," the other me continued. "This is our world," she said. "I'm not leaving it." I nodded. "Listen to her." "Shut the fuck up," the other me screamed. "Sweetheart, please, we're gonna die here. On the news they said that America, China, Japan, France, and—" "I know what they said," Molly interrupted, caressing his face. "But we don't belong in their world. Just like they don't belong in ours. Just let them go home. Stay here with me." My parallel self wailed. "But none of this is right. None of this was ever supposed to—" The shattering of glass silenced him, and we all turned to face the horrendous thing that Director Bloom had feared. A creature not from a different universe, but from a different planet. One many light years away. An individual from a large alien species hell-bent on ensuring that humanity did not repeat its mistakes. Ensuring that our artificial intelligence would not achieve the unthinkable. eradicating all organic things from all corners of reality, then consuming the very universe itself. It was more than a tall thing. The creature with royal blue flesh filled half the room. To its eyes, the humans at its feet, or limbs, must have been little more than small rodents. The creature did not seem to have arms or legs. 20 or so appendages sprouted from the outer edges of its circular body, which was no more than a humongous face, one with polished squares for eyes, or sensory organs of some kind, and a black, toothless maw, a featureless abyss large enough to consume most things on Earth. But the alien did not strike with its open jaws, which spoke a silky, melodic series of words in some foreign, sing-song language. Rather, the awful, beautiful thing attacked with one of its many appendages, a predatory limb with a pointed tip that stretched a staggering distance. The living weapon met its mark before I'd even blinked. My other self unleashed a sound beyond animalistic. I felt his horror in his core, as if we had become intertwined. It was a wail of unfiltered agony and fear. Molly's bleeding form had been skewered on a blue limb and flung 50 feet to the side of the larger room. The limp corpse landed with a resounding collection of cracks, which hopefully ended her pain immediately. "Quickly," I whispered to Helen, who was fiddling with a device on her wrist to open the tunnel. "He's distracted." And then the alien's choral chittering ceased. Its many square sensors rotated towards me, as did the two eyes on my parallel self's face. His red, puffy eyes looked vacant. He had not accepted it. That Molly was gone. Those parallel eyes of mine had switched off. "Where is the creator?" sang the creature's deafening voice in perfect English. I realized then that the alien hadn't accidentally stumbled into Dozen Minus. It had come specifically to that building. It was hunting those responsible for creating the artificial intelligence. Those with the brains to do it again. Helen and I were hardly the creators, but I'm sure that wouldn't have made any difference to the murderous beast. "Helen?" I whispered as my colleague shakily tapped the watch screen. Then came a familiar groan, the sound of reality itself unzipping, and there opened a thin, oval doorway, shaped like the white of an eye, visible through semi-parted lids. Through that gateway, I saw a short, blackened tunnel, followed by a second doorway, one that revealed the bright colors of that near-identical lobby from Earth 1. Only that reality's lobby did not sit at the heart of a destroyed city. It was full of excitably chattering Dozen Minus workers. The image was a little blurry, of course, as if looking through a stained glass window, but it was undeniably there. "What is that?" whispered the titanic alien upon seeing the opening to another universe. "Which of you did this? Tell me, before I puncture you." I heard rapid footsteps, and I swiveled to see my parallel self seizing his chance, but I threw an arm in his way, bringing that other Adriano and myself crashing to the tiles. The two of us tussled on the floor, flailing a series of equally determined punches and winding one another. But I prevailed and started to wrap my hands around the neck of that other me, started to watch his soul vacate his body. "Be with Molly," I whispered. "Adriano!" Helen screamed. An unprecedented weight clunked the back of my head, and I was sent sideways, sent sprawling across the floor, clutching my burning skull. Helen hadn't been screaming my name. Her allegiance had shifted to the other Adriano. "You bitch," I grunted as I clambered weakly to my feet. "Oh." My sentence closed with a splutter of blood from my half-open lips, and when I looked down, there was a blue limb protruding from my chest, a pointed tip that had torn through my back, had punctured me and come out the other side. Moments later, I flew upwards, watching the two figures below fade into distance. And then, I died. Though, I've not been entirely forthcoming with you. You see, I am Adriano Rossi, but I am not from your Earth. I am the Adriano who ran screaming in terror, alongside Helen Harding, from the roaring beast. The one who sprang through Weston's tunnel as some abominable alien hurled several of its limbs toward us. The creature narrowly missed our fleeing forms, and we sealed the tunnel. Sealed ourselves in Earth 1. Your Earth. Things aren't so simple, however. Yes, I am that Adriano from Earth 2. But something happened when I entered this world. A horror beyond existential. Beyond anything human. I'm still me, but I gained your Adriano's memories. His feelings. His fears from that awful day. His last ever day. My mind is both mine and his. I'm sure your Adriano and your Helen felt it when they first entered Earth 2. We were not made to wander between realities. I think Molly might have been right. I should have stayed on Earth 2. Should have died with that reality. Since that day, many months ago, I've counted my blessings that I inherited parts of your Adriano. Not the bad parts, I hope, but enough to pass as him in the eyes of Dozen Minus's leaders. Then again, perhaps they do not care. After all, Adriano would hardly be missed. He wasn't a good man, and I should know. I am him in many ways. But in other ways I am not. And whilst I continue to work for this company in this foreign world, I will strive to be better than the man I have replaced. Strive to do more than simply slip neatly into this reality, which differs so greatly from my dead one. I will bring this organization to its knees if I must. I will make your world better. Make sure it does not meet a similar fate to mine. I just have to remain focused. It is painful to be with your Molly again. She is so like the wife I lost in my world. But that Molly died. I won't convince myself otherwise. And I'm trying hard to pull away from her, in spite of our natural attraction. There are things which demand my attention. Your Stephen Bloom, though he is not foolish enough to reopen the tunnel to Earth 2, has not abandoned his quest to ruin other worlds. He has not learnt his lesson. I know that he and Weston are developing a tunnel to find another parallel Earth. A new one for them to destroy. They will never stop. They'll find 1,000 new realities. 1,000 new experimental grounds. And when they've burnt all of those to the ground, leaving no alternate Earths left to ruin, I fear what follows. Fear that Director Blom won't hesitate to do what he most likely has always wanted to do. A terrible end that he will pursue simply because he can. The end of your world.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.